Mist gathers quietly over the Toba crater lake basin, and tonight you drift above its wide blue hollow where an ancient volcanic mountain folded inward and left a lake resting in the sky. Settle in and let the day loosen its hold on you. The air is cool here, softer than the lowlands, with the smell of wet leaves, stone, and distant fresh water moving through the dark. You are high in northern Sumatra, though the basin feels almost removed from the island around it. The Toba crater lake basin holds its water inside a great volcanic caldera, a bowl so large that the far shore can fade into haze. We move slowly at its edge, not as explorers, but as quiet company beside something old. The lake below is still and deep, and its surface keeps the last pale light like a memory. At first, the strangest thing is how peaceful it feels. A place shaped by one of Earth's greatest eruptions now lies under cloud shadow, rain, and green slopes. The steep walls rise in softened lines, worn by weather and forest. You hear almost nothing but water touching stone. Even the wind seems careful here, passing over the basin in long breaths, as if it knows this place prefers not to be disturbed. We begin above the rim, where the land opens suddenly. Hills fold away into a vast oval of blue, and the lake seems too large to be held by land at all. It feels like an inland sea lifted into the mountains, with cool air resting on your skin, and the scent of damp soil rising from the slopes. The light falls gently across the water, and the water gives it back slowly. The Toba crater lake basin is strange, because it is not just a lake. It is the quiet surface of a volcanic memory. Long ago, magma collected beneath this part of Sumatra, hidden under rock, heat, and pressure. Over time, that chamber grew vast enough to change the shape of the land above it. When the eruption came, the ground lost its support and settled inward, forming the enormous hollow where we now drift. There is no need to picture it sharply. Tonight, we let the old fire remain far behind us. What matters now is the shape it left behind, broad and calm beneath the sky. You can feel the basin's scale in the way sound thins across it. A bird call from the forest seems to vanish before it reaches the far shore. A ripple travels outward, then disappears into the blue distance. The lake sits within a caldera, which is different from an ordinary crater. A crater is often a smaller mouth, a place where material was thrown out. A caldera is a collapse, a settling of the ground after the hidden chamber below has emptied or shifted. So this basin is not only carved from above, it is a place where the earth lowered itself, quietly in geologic memory, leaving room for rain, rivers, and time. You may notice how the surrounding slopes do not form a perfect ring. They are uneven, softened, and stretched by fault lines and old volcanic structures. The basin is long, almost like a great sleeping eye set into the highlands. Its strangeness comes partly from that scale. You stand there, or float there, in imagination, and your mind tries to measure it, then gives up. The water below is fresh, though it fills a volcanic hollow. Rain falls often in these uplands, slipping through forest and soil, gathering in streams, and moving down toward the lake. The air carries the smell of leaves after rain. The stones near shore feel cool and dark. The whole place seems to breathe through mist, water, and green growth. As we move down from the rim toward the surface, the basin widens around us, and the lake begins to feel less like a view and more like a world. The first layer of Toba is light. Morning light can spread across the lake in silver sheets, while evening light turns the water blue-gray and almost metallic. Clouds drift low enough to touch the ridges. The surface changes constantly, but never quickly. Even when small waves move across it, they seem to be thinking slowly. You feel the air cool as we descend. It brushes the face and hands with the softness of highland weather. The heat of the tropics has thinned here, lifted away by elevation, cloud, and water. The scent is green and mineral, with fresh water underneath it. Somewhere along the shore, wet grasses bend under beads of mist. The lake basin is strange because it holds two opposite feelings at once. It is open and enclosed. It is immense, yet held within walls. You can look across it and feel the freedom of open water. Then lift your eyes and remember that all of this rests inside a volcanic boundary. The basin is a room made by the planet, roofed with clouds and lined with forest. In ordinary lakes, the basin may be shaped by glaciers, rivers, faults, or gradual erosion. Here, the main hollow comes from volcanic collapse, and that gives Toba its unusual geometry. The slopes drop steeply in places because caldera walls can be abrupt. The lake floor is deep because the depression began as a lowered block of crust. Over long spans, sediment softens the bottom, but the original scale remains. You do not need to hold the science tightly. Let it come like the lake itself, one quiet layer over another. Beneath the water, fine particles settle year after year. Ash, clay, pollen, leaves, and mineral grains fall slowly through the depths. They make a soft archive on the lake floor, a record written without urgency. The basin is also shaped by rain. In this humid highland air, water is always working gently. It loosens soil, feeds streams, polishes stones, and carries fine sediment toward the lake. The shore smells of wet earth after a shower. The leaves shine. Small streams speak in low voices as they enter the wide stillness. Life gathers along these margins. Plants lean toward the water. Insects move above reeds. Fish turn beneath the surface in the dim green shallows. Birds pass over the lake with measured wing beats. Nothing here needs to hurry for us. You watch, and the basin keeps its own time. The strangeness of Toba is not only in what happened long ago, it is in what came after. A place opened by fire became a cradle for water. A collapsed volcanic center became a cool highland lake. The old eruption is present, but softened by every raindrop that has fallen since. It is geology asleep under reflection. And as we drift farther out across the water, the next strange shape rises slowly from the lake itself. Samosir Island rests inside the Toba crater lake basin like a landform that should not quite be there. From a distance, it looks calm and green, with hills and fields lifting from the water. But geologically, it is part of the basin's deepest oddity. It is not simply an island left behind by rising water. It is a resurgent dome, land pushed upward again after collapse. You can imagine the motion very slowly. After the great eruption and the sinking of the caldera, the volcanic system beneath Toba did not become perfectly still all at once. Heat remained below. Magma, gases, and pressure continued to shape the crust. In places, the floor of the caldera rose again, not in a sudden gesture, but as a long upward swelling across time. That rising helped form Samosir, the island that sits within the lake's broad blue body. It gives the basin a nested feeling. A lake inside a caldera, an island inside the lake, uplift inside collapse. You look at it, and the mind feels a quiet loop forming. The earth lowered itself, then lifted part of itself again, and water gathered around the lifted land. The shore of Samosir can feel gentle, with waves touching stones and vegetation leaning toward the lake. The air smells of damp grass, lake water, and warm soil after sun. But beneath that softness is a deep structural story. Layers of volcanic deposits, uplifted sediments, and old lake beds speak of movement that took place almost too slowly for the human body to understand. We float nearer, and the island grows more detailed. Slopes appear through haze. The water darkens where the depth increases. The far rim of the caldera hovers beyond it, blue and gray in the distance. You can feel how large the basin is by the way Samosir itself seems spacious, yet still belongs to the greater hollow around it. This is one reason Toba feels so unusual. Many crater lakes are simple to picture, a round depression with water inside. Toba is more layered. Its basin has a large caldera, a deep freshwater lake, a prominent island formed by uplift, and surrounding highlands, shaped by ash, faulting, erosion, and rain. It is not one shape. It is a conversation between many slow shapes. The lake's surface hides the deeper geometry, Beneath it there are submerged slopes, basins, sediment plains, and old volcanic structures. Light enters the upper water, turning green and blue, then fades with depth. The deeper water becomes colder, quieter, and more separate from the wind. If you could sink gently through it, you would feel the pressure gather around you like a calm hand. The water here does not need to be oceanic to feel deep. It has its own inland depth, held under mountain air. Sound softens as we imagine descending. The bright surface becomes a pale ceiling. Particles drift downward, each one slow enough to seem suspended. The lake is not empty. It is full of tiny movements that do not ask to be noticed. Around Samosir, freshwater life follows the rhythms of light, temperature, nutrients, and shore habitat. Fish move where food gathers. Plants hold the shallows. Microorganisms bloom and fade with seasons and water mixing. The basin breathes biologically as well as geologically, and you begin to sense that strangeness can be peaceful when it has had enough time to settle. There is comfort in that. The Toba crater lake basin does not remain frozen in its volcanic beginning. It changes. It receives rain. It grows moss and forest. It lets mist collect in the morning, and stars reflect at night. Even a place made by upheaval can become quiet when time is given room to work. Below this, the water deepens, and the story turns from the island above the surface to the hidden floor far beneath it. Below this, the water deepens, and the story turns from the island above the surface to the hidden floor far beneath it. You leave the green margins behind, and the lake opens under you in a widening blue stillness. The Toba crater lake basin feels quieter here, because the shore no longer gives the eye an easy place to rest. We move out over depth, where the water holds light for a while, then slowly lets it go. At the surface, the lake is all reflection and breath. Clouds pass across it like slow animals of vapor, and the surrounding rim appears and disappears in soft haze. But underneath that bright skin, the water becomes a column, a long vertical room of cooling blue. You can imagine your body becoming lighter, not sinking with effort, but being received by the lake, as if the basin itself were making space for you. The first few meters still remember the sky. The water has a green-blue clarity in places, and the light moves in wavering threads along suspended particles. Small fish may gather where the shallower edges offer food and cover. Plants root near the margins, taking what sunlight they can, while tiny plankton drift in the open water with a softness almost like dust in a sunbeam. As we move deeper into the Toba crater lake basin, the surface noises begin to lose their edges. Wind becomes a muted shifting above. A distant ripple becomes only a change in brightness. The temperature feels steadier, less touched by the hour of the day. The lake has a way of taking the outside world and folding it into quiet. Deep lakes often divide themselves into layers. Warm water may rest near the surface, while colder, denser water settles below. In tropical highlands, the pattern can be subtle, because the air is not frozen above, yet depth still creates separation. The upper water feels the wind and sun, while the lower water waits, dim and slow, with its own chemistry and pace. This layering is part of the basin's strangeness. Toba is a freshwater lake, but its volcanic origin gives it a depth and shape that feel almost marine in imagination. The steep Caldera walls and deep central basin allow water to collect in great volume. When wind crosses the surface, it cannot easily stir everything below. Much of the lake remains removed from weather, held in cool blue suspension. You might picture the lake floor far below as a broad, muted plain. It is not bare stone everywhere. It is softened by sediment, by ash, clay, organic remains, and mineral grains that have fallen through the water over long spans of time. Every year adds another delicate layer. Every storm, dry spell, bloom, and landslide leaves something behind, and the lake floor receives it without haste. There is something almost comforting about sediment. It is the opposite of urgency. A leaf breaks down, a grain of ash settles, a tiny shell or fragment of plant matter sinks through darkness, turning slowly as it goes. In the Toba crater lake basin, those small arrivals have been gathering for ages, making a soft record at the bottom of the Caldera bowl. You descend through the thought of that record, and the water darkens by degrees. The light above becomes thinner, filtered by depth and distance. Blue turns to dusky blue, then toward a calm gray-green darkness. The pressure increases gently, evenly, without any drama, only a steady sense that more water now rests above you. It feels like a heavy blanket laid down with care. In deep lake basins, the bottom can preserve signs of old climate and old eruptions. Fine sediment may hold pollen from forests, minerals from runoff, and traces of volcanic ash from distant or nearby events. Scientists read these layers with instruments and cores, but we can imagine them more simply tonight. They are pages made of mud and time, lying flat beneath still water. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because it contains memory in many forms at once. The Caldera walls remember collapse. Sumatra remembers uplift. The lake floor remembers everything that has fallen through the water since the basin filled. Nothing speaks loudly here, but everything has been keeping a record. You only have to be still enough to feel the scale of it. The bottom is not visible from where we drift, yet it shapes the feeling of the whole lake. Depth changes the color of water, the way waves travel, the way sound moves, and the way temperature settles. The surface may shine in full daylight, but the deep center remains inward-looking. It is a hidden part of the landscape, as real as any mountain, though covered by water. And as we drift nearer to the unseen floor, the basin begins to feel less like a lake placed inside land, and more like a slow thought held inside stone. The stone around the Toba Crater Lake Basin carries the trace of volcanic ash and welded deposits spread across the surrounding highlands. Long ago, material from the eruption moved outward as hot currents and falling ash, then cooled into layers that weather now softens. We do not need to follow that movement with intensity. We can feel only its aftershape, the way hills, cliffs, and soils keep the memory of volcanic material. At the rim and beyond it, landforms made from ash and pumice have been carved by rain. Water finds weakness, enters cracks, and slowly lowers slopes. Roots grow into softened rock. Moss holds moisture against surfaces that were once hot and bare. The smell near these places can be earthy and green, with a faint mineral coolness rising after rain. Volcanic deposits can be light, porous, and easily shaped by weather. Over long spans, rain cuts gullies, streams gather sediment, and slopes take on a rounded, folded appearance. In Toba, this means the basin is not only a hollow filled with water, but a whole surrounding landscape altered by the materials the old volcano left behind. The strangeness spreads outward from the lake. You may notice that volcanic landscapes often look both young and ancient. Their origin can be sharp in geologic terms, yet weather quickly begins its softening work. In the Toba Crater Lake Basin, the eruption belongs to deep time, but the forests and rains make the land feel alive and continually renewed. Old ash becomes soil, soil holds roots, roots hold water and shade. There is a gentleness in that transformation. Something expelled from the earth becomes a place where leaves fall quietly. Something that once moved as heated material becomes a slope where mist collects. The basin's strangeness is not only that it formed through volcanic collapse, it is that the aftermath became so green, so full of fresh water, so calmly occupied by weather and life. We keep moving along the inner walls of the caldera, where the slopes may rise steeply from the lake. In places, they seem to hold the water like the sides of a vast cup. The light here changes with the angle of the sun. Morning brings pale gold to ridges, while afternoon lays shadows in the folds, and evening lets the whole basin breathe blue. The rocks are not uniform. Caldera systems are complex, shaped by faults, eruptions, collapse, uplift, erosion, and later deposits. You can think of the basin as a layered structure, not a simple whole. Some parts sank, some parts rose, some were buried, cut, washed, or smoothed. Over time, the original volcanic geometry became covered with the patient handwriting of rain. The Toba Crater Lake Basin also sits within a broader tectonic setting. Sumatra lies along an active margin, where the oceanic plate to the west moves beneath the edge of Southeast Asia. That deeper movement helps feed the volcanic arc. It is a slow planetary process, mostly hidden from ordinary sight. yet it has shaped mountains, volcanoes, basins, and coastlines across the region. Tonight, we do not follow that plate boundary with sharp attention. We let it remain beneath us, very far down, like a low note in the earth. The lake, the rim, Samosir, and the softened volcanic slopes are all surface expressions of deeper forces. You feel them not as disturbance, but as weight, as the calm presence of geology beneath water. The air along the slopes feels damp and cool. Leaves hold beads of moisture after cloud passes over the rim. Small streams descend through gullies, carrying pale sediment toward the lake. Their voices are small compared with the basin, but they are steady. Over enough time, even small streams become important because they never stop speaking to the stone. Erosion is one of the quietest explanations for Toba's present shape. The original Caldera made the great form, but water has been editing it ever since. Slopes retreat, sediment fans build near shore, valleys deepen, shorelines shift slightly with lake level and deposition. The basin is not fixed, even when it appears still from above. You can feel that slow change in the softness of the landscape. There are no clean lines that last forever in wet highlands. Rain rounds them, roots loosen them, streams carry them away grain by grain. The Toba crater lake basin becomes stranger the longer you consider it, because it is both a monument to a rare geologic event and a living basin still being shaped by ordinary weather. And as the caldera walls fade behind a veil of cloud, we move toward the hidden warmth that lingers in a place built by ancient fire. In some places around the Toba crater lake basin, warm springs and geothermal traces remind you that the story beneath the lake has not vanished completely. The surface may feel cool, the mist may be soft, and the water may lie quietly under clouds, but the deep crust still carries heat. Volcanic landscapes often keep warmth in subtle ways, letting it rise through fractures, springs, and mineral-rich waters. You might come upon a warm seep near the shore, where steam lifts faintly into cool air. The smell may be mineral, earthy, and slightly sulfurous, though softened by open water and vegetation. Stones near the spring can feel slick or stained by minerals. The sound is delicate, only water moving over rock, only heat finding a path upward. This is another reason Toba feels so unusual. It is a vast lake basin, but it is also part of a volcanic system. Heat, water, rock, and fractures meet beneath the surface. Rainwater can sink into the ground, warm as it moves through heated rock, dissolve minerals, and return through springs. What reaches the surface is not dramatic. It is simply warmer water, a quiet signal from below. The Toba crater lake basin holds these contrasts closely. Cool highland wind passes over a lake born from volcanic heat. Mist drifts above water that fills a collapsed volcanic chamber. Forest grows on ash. Fresh water gathers inside a structure made by magma. The place is strange because each element seems to answer another. Softness over force, green over stone, stillness over depth. As you rest near such a spring in imagination, the air changes against your face. It is warmer for a moment, carrying a damp mineral breath. Then the wider coolness of the lake returns. The contrast is small, but the body notices it. Sleepy attention is often drawn to these gentle differences. Warm and cool, open and enclosed, deep and near. Geothermal water can carry dissolved minerals that influence local chemistry. Around springs, life may gather in slightly different ways, depending on temperature and mineral content. Microbial communities can live where warmth and chemistry create small niches. They do not announce themselves. They form films, colors, textures, and quiet metabolic work along stone and sediment. We often think of life in terms of large creatures, but the deep character of a place is often held by smaller ones. In Toba, microscopic life helps process nutrients, respond to changes in light, and participate in the lake's cycles. Tiny drifting organisms feed other organisms. Bacteria work in water and sediment. The basin is alive not only at the shore, but throughout its layered volume. You start to notice the smallness of that life, and it steadies the mind. The grand caldera becomes a home for quiet processes. A molecule dissolves, a cell divides, a particle sinks, a fish turns in dim water, a warm spring releases minerals, a cloud passes over the rim. Each event is small, but together they fill the Toba crater lake basin with continuous, unhurried activity. There is no need for the lake to explain itself quickly. Its strangeness unfolds in overlapping scales. The enormous caldera belongs to volcanic time. The uplifted island belongs to crustal adjustment. The sediment belongs to centuries of settling. The plankton belongs to sunlight and days. Your breathing belongs to this moment, slow and present beside the water. The lake invites this kind of layered thinking. You can let your mind move from far below the crust to the smooth skin of the surface, then back to the green shore without strain. Everything is connected by water. Rain enters stone, stone warms water, water fills the hollow, and the hollow shapes the air above it. The basin is a circle with many paths through it. As the warmth fades behind us, we move back into the cool body of the lake, where light and life depend on the gentle mixing of water. The upper waters of the Toba crater lake basin receive sunlight, wind, and rain. These are simple gifts, but in a deep lake they create complex patterns. Sunlight warms the surface and feeds microscopic plants. Wind stirs the upper layer and pushes small waves toward shore. Rain adds fresh water, cools the skin of the lake, and carries nutrients from the surrounding slopes. You float near the surface again in imagination, where the world is brighter. The water smells clean and faintly green. The air has the coolness of altitude, with the damp softness that comes before or after rain. Light breaks across ripples in small moving pieces. Each little shimmer seems to appear, dissolve, and return somewhere else. Phytoplankton, the tiny plant-like drifters of the lake, live by light. They are too small for the eye to separate easily, yet they help shape the color and productivity of the water. When conditions are right, they grow more abundant. When nutrients are limited or light changes, they fade. Their lives are brief, but their influence is broad. In a basin as large as Toba, nutrients do not spread evenly everywhere at all times. Rivers and streams bring some from the land. Wind-driven mixing moves some through the upper water. Sinking particles carry some downward. In deeper layers, nutrients may remain separated until mixing or upwelling returns them toward light. The lake is constantly redistributing what life needs, but slowly. The Toba crater lake basin is strange, partly because its size allows lake processes to feel almost oceanic. There are open water zones, near-shore habitats, deep water conditions, and local influences from streams and slopes. A small pond turns over and changes quickly. Toba has a larger, more spacious rhythm. It answers weather, but not always immediately. You can hear that slowness in the way waves meet the shore. They do not roar. They arrive in low, repeating touches. Stone becomes wet, then shines, then darkens again. Reeds move with a small brushing sound. The water carries a faint earthy smell from the land, mixed with the clean scent of rain. It is enough to keep you present without waking you too much. Fish in the lake follow food, shelter, temperature, and light. Some remain closer to shore, where plants, stones, and shallows create structure. Others use open water, moving through dimmer layers. Their bodies are quiet expressions of freshwater life in a volcanic basin. They do not need to be rare or spectacular to belong deeply to the place. You may imagine one fish turning just below the surface, its side catching a brief flash of light. Then it is gone into green water. This small movement is part of the basin's larger calm. The lake may have been formed by deep geologic forces, yet its daily life is often made of minor gestures: a fin, a ripple, a drifting speck of food. Birds may cross the basin at dawn or dusk, following shorelines or open air over water. Their calls travel briefly, then soften. Insects gather where vegetation meets the lake. Leaves fall, become waterlogged, sink, and join the long descent of organic matter. The Toba Crater Lake Basin receives all of it, from the smallest wing to the widest cloud shadow. There is a tenderness in noticing ordinary life inside an extraordinary form. The caldera does not overshadow the small things. It holds them. The basin's strangeness becomes gentler when you see that it is not only a geological wonder, but a place where countless quiet lives continue in rhythm with rain, light, and depth. And as the surface light thins again, we drift toward the rim, where the lake's great hollow meets the sky and weather gathers in slow procession. Weather over the Toba Crater Lake Basin has its own softness. Clouds can build along the surrounding highlands, their lower edges brushing the slopes like pale fabric. Rain may arrive in long veils, dimming the far shore until it disappears. Then the lake becomes a world of near sounds. Drops touching water, leaves receiving water, small streams growing fuller in the gullies. You can feel the air change before rain. It cools and thickens. The smell of soil rises, dark and green. The surface of the lake loses some of its shine and becomes finely textured. Each raindrop makes a small ring, and the rings overlap until the whole water surface seems to breathe in tiny circles. Rain is one of the basin's great sculptors. It fills the lake, feeds the surrounding forest, carries minerals and organic matter downslope, and slowly alters the volcanic deposits around the caldera. In a humid tropical highland, rain is not an occasional visitor. It is a steady participant in the landscape. It helps turn ash into soil and slopes into softened forms. The Toba Crater Lake Basin sits high enough that clouds and water often feel close together. Mist can erase the distance between lake and sky. The rim may appear as a faint line, then vanish. Samosir may become a shadow in pale grey air. When this happens, the basin feels especially strange, not because it is alarming, but because its scale becomes hidden inside softness. We move through that mist without hurry. The droplets feel cool on your face. Sound becomes close and rounded. Far details fade, and the lake asks less from the eyes. You begin to listen instead, to the faint tapping on leaves, the low wash along the shore, the quiet spaces between drops. The world narrows, and sleep comes nearer. Water in the basin moves through cycles of arrival and departure. Rain falls directly onto the lake. Streams enter from surrounding slopes. Some water leaves through outflow and evaporation. Some sinks into ground or moves slowly through subsurface paths. The lake level reflects these balances over time, rising and falling with climate, seasons, and the watershed's quiet work. A basin is not only the visible water, it is the entire area that sends water inward. Every slope, ravine, soil pocket, and forested fold around Toba participates. When rain falls miles away on the rim, the lake may eventually receive part of it. This gives the Toba Crater Lake Basin a sense of inward gathering, as though the land is always returning water to the hollow. The surrounding forest helps slow that return. Leaves intercept rain, roots hold soil, fallen branches and plant litter soften the movement of runoff. Instead of rushing all at once, water filters, seeps, and gathers. The smell of wet vegetation is part of this process, a scent made from decay, growth, mineral soil, and cool air. Where slopes are steeper, streams may cut more strongly. They carry sand, silt, and organic fragments toward deltas or small fans at the lakeshore. Over time, these deposits build subtle shapes beneath the water. The shoreline is not a simple line. It is a shifting meeting place where land becomes lake, and lake slowly receives land. You can imagine standing at such a mouth, where a stream enters the greater stillness. Its water may be slightly cloudier, cooler after rain, and scented with forest. It spreads into the lake and loses its narrow voice. Sediment begins to settle. Floating leaves drift outward. The large basin accepts the small stream without changing its calm expression. This gathering quality is one of Toba's quiet wonders. The caldera draws water inward from a wide highland bowl. The lake holds it, cools it, layers it, and reflects the sky from it. Rain that touched leaves becomes part of a deep volcanic lake. Mist that formed above warm tropical air becomes a silver veil over ancient collapse. The basin makes continuity visible. As the rain passes, the far shore returns slowly, and we follow the clearing light toward the long volcanic rim that holds the lake in place. The rim of the Toba Crater Lake Basin is not a wall in the simple sense. It is a broad, irregular boundary made of highlands, slopes, faults, and older volcanic structures. From the water, it can look like a series of blue-green ridges. From above, it outlines the vast caldera, stretched across the landscape like an imprint left by deep motion. You look toward that rim, and the eye travels a long way. Some ridges appear close, with trees and gullies visible. Others sit farther back, softened by haze, until they become only tone and shape. The lake reflects them imperfectly, breaking them into slow pieces. Wind moves across the surface and carries the reflected mountains away. Caldera rims often preserve clues about collapse and eruption. They can mark the edges where the ground lowered, cracked, or shifted. In Toba, later erosion and vegetation have softened much of this geometry, but the overall basin remains immense and unmistakable. The rim tells you that the lake did not simply collect in a valley. It occupies a volcanic hollow of rare size. The scale is difficult to feel from one place. You have to move around it in imagination. One shore gives only a partial view. Another angle reveals Sumatra in relation to the far walls. A high viewpoint shows the lake widening beyond expectation. The Toba Crater Lake Basin resists being understood all at once, and that resistance is part of its calm. There is relief in not needing to grasp it fully. You can let the basin be larger than your attention. Sleep often comes when the mind stops measuring and starts receiving. The rim, the water, the island, and the clouds can remain partly unknown. They are still there when your thoughts drift. They do not require completion. The rocks of the rim have been changed by weather, vegetation, and time. Rain has traced paths down their surfaces. Roots have entered cracks, minerals have altered under water and air. Volcanic glass and ash have broken down into finer particles. Soil has formed, darkened, and thickened where plants could take hold. The old deposits have become part of an ecosystem. This transformation is slow enough to feel restful. You can imagine a bare volcanic surface receiving its first thin weathering, then a little more mineral change, then moss, seed, root, shade, leaf litter, and richer soil. There is no single moment when stone becomes landscape. It happens gradually, like waking in reverse, until the basin is covered in green quiet. Around the Toba Crater Lake Basin, the combination of altitude, moisture, and volcanic soil supports lush growth. Forest and cultivated clearings may share the slopes, though tonight we remain with the natural forms, the trees, grasses, reeds, and damp earth. The vegetation softens the caldera's edges. It gives the old volcanic structure a living surface. You hear wind combing through leaves on the slope. The sound arrives lightly across water. It mixes with the lake's low breathing at shore. Somewhere a stream moves over stone. The smell is cool and layered. Wet bark, green leaves, mineral soil, fresh water, and the faint sweetness that rises when rain has recently passed. The rim also shapes the basin's atmosphere. It catches cloud, directs wind, and frames the lake's weather. Air moves over the highlands, cools, lifts, and condenses. Shadows fall from ridges into water. The lake responds to wind patterns made by surrounding land. So the caldera is not only a container for water, it is a maker of local climate and mood. This may be one of the deepest answers to why Toba feels so strange. It is not only large, not only volcanic, not only beautiful. It is self-contained enough to feel like a world, yet open enough to receive sky, weather, birds, rain, and light. You feel enclosed and spacious at the same time. You feel held without being confined. And as evening moves across the rim, the lake grows darker, and we begin to follow the change from surface brightness into the slow blue hours. Evening in the Toba Crater Lake Basin comes gently. The sun lowers behind ridges, and the water shifts from blue to pewter, then to a darker, softer tone. The far shore loses detail. Samosir becomes a broad shadow. The air cools against your skin, and the smell of water becomes more noticeable, clean, mineral, and faintly green. This is when the lake's size feels especially quiet. Daylight no longer helps the eye travel easily from one edge to another. Distances grow uncertain. A shore that seemed clear at noon becomes a band of shadow. The basin holds the fading light and spreads it thinly until the surface seems less like water and more like a dim mirror laid inside the mountains. As we drift in that half-light, the science becomes simple again. Water absorbs and scatters light. Depth removes color. Evening lowers the angle of illumination, so the lake reflects more sky and reveals less of itself. The surrounding slopes block light unevenly, making pockets of early darkness. The basin's form turns sunset into a slow, uneven descent. You may feel your own breathing match it. Inhale with the last light on the water. Exhale as the shore dims. The Toba Crater Lake Basin has a way of teaching slowness through ordinary changes. Nothing hurries the evening. The lake receives darkness as easily as it received rain. At night, the surface may hold stars if clouds open above. They tremble in small ripples, stretching and breaking with each movement of water. In a volcanic lake, under a highland sky, starlight can feel unexpectedly close. The basin becomes a bowl of dark water holding small pieces of the universe. Above and below, darkness meets darkness, with only faint points between. Life continues in this dimness. Some fish move differently after sunset, following food or avoiding brighter shallows. Insects gather near vegetation. Night sounds rise from the shore, softened by distance. Microorganisms continue their quiet chemical work. The lake does not sleep in the human sense. It simply changes its rhythm, becoming cooler, darker, and more inward. There is no harsh boundary between day and night here. The shift is gradual, like ink spreading in water. The rim darkens first, then the slopes, then the lake's far reaches. A little light remains in the west. Then even that becomes a memory. You are left with the sound of water and the feeling of depth below. The strangeness of Toba at night is tender. You know there is an island in the lake, a caldera around the island, and a deep basin beneath the surface, but most of it is hidden. The place becomes known by absence. You feel its size because you cannot see across it. You feel its depth because the dark water refuses to explain itself. This kind of darkness is not empty. It is full of cooled stone, settled sediment, quiet animals, suspended particles, and the patient structure of the basin. It holds the story without displaying it. That may be why the Toba Crater Lake Basin feels so suited to sleep. It lets the mind rest inside something larger, without needing every detail lit. As night gathers more completely, we let the shoreline recede and return to the deeper center, where the lake keeps its oldest silence beneath the dark. The deep center of the Toba Crater Lake Basin is a place we approach only in imagination. The water above it is layered, dim, and cool. The floor lies far below, covered in fine sediment and the slow remains of everything that has settled. Down there, the motions are small. A particle falls, a current shifts faintly, a chemical boundary holds itself in quiet balance. In lakes with great depth, the bottom water can be separated from the surface for long periods. It may be colder and lower in oxygen, depending on mixing, temperature, organic matter, and basin shape. The exact conditions change through time, but the principle is gentle to picture. The deeper water is less touched by wind and daylight. It belongs more to gravity, chemistry, and patience. You can feel the descent as a gradual narrowing of sensation. First, there was wind on the face, then cool water around the hands, then fading light, then pressure. Now there is only darkness with a faint sense of volume. The lake is not pressing harshly. It is simply present on every side, holding you in the thought of its depth. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because its deepest parts are hidden beneath such a calm surface. From above, the lake may look like a broad blue expanse, beautiful but understandable. Beneath that surface lies a caldera floor shaped by collapse, uplift, sedimentation, and long-term water chemistry. The visible lake is only the upper page of a much thicker book. Sediment at the bottom can include ash from the original volcanic deposits reworked by erosion, as well as later material washed in by streams. Organic matter descends from plankton and shoreline plants. Minerals arrive dissolved in water, then sometimes precipitate or bind into fine particles. Layer upon layer, the bottom becomes a quiet mixture of geology and life. This is not a lifeless place. Even where darkness is complete, microorganisms can work within sediment and water. They use chemical pathways rather than sunlight. They participate in the slow breakdown of organic matter and the cycling of nutrients. Their world is small, but it belongs fully to the lake. You do not need to see them to sense their presence. The bottom of a deep lake is a kind of listening place. It receives what falls. It records what changes above. A wet season may leave a different trace than a dry one. A slope failure may add a thicker layer. A bloom of plankton may send more organic matter downward. The deep floor of Toba is always being written upon, even when the surface looks unchanged. There is peace in that downward movement. Nothing is wasted in the basin. Leaves, dust, pollen, ash, and the bodies of tiny organisms all become part of the floor. The lake gathers them without judgment. It turns them into layers. It holds them in darkness. It makes time visible, though only to those who learn to read slowly. You might imagine resting just above that sediment, not touching it, only hovering in dark water. The floor is soft and pale in the mind's eye, faintly uneven, marked by subtle slopes and settled material. No sunlight reaches you. Sound is reduced to a deep interior hush. The pressure is steady, and the cold is complete but calm. The Toba crater lake basin above you is now only a shape held in memory. The rim, the island, the rain, the forest, and the mist are all far overhead. Yet they are connected to this place by everything that sinks. The bottom is not separate from the sky. It is where the sky's water and the land's particles eventually come to rest. And as we hover near that hidden floor, we begin to sense the basin not as a single event, but as a long exchange between fire, water, stone, and time. Fire made the first great opening, but water made the place we feel tonight. Without rain and streams, the caldera would be only a hollow. With water, it becomes a lake, a mirror, a habitat, and a climate within the mountains. The Toba crater lake basin is strange because its origin and its present character seem so different. One belongs to heat, the other belongs to stillness. The old eruption released enormous volumes of material, but we let that fact remain distant and softened. What matters in this quiet hour is the aftermath. The ground settled, the basin formed, water gathered, sediment began its descent, plants returned, weather moved through. Over time, the caldera became less a wound in the landscape and more a deep vessel. You can feel that vessel shape in the body. The idea of it is rounded, enclosing, and calm. A basin gathers. It receives. It does not chase. In Toba, the gathering happens at an immense scale, with rainfall, slope water, nutrients, sediment, mist, and reflected light, all moving inward. The lake is the resting place for countless small journeys. The surrounding land gives itself to the water slowly. A leaf falls on a hillside, breaks down, and becomes part of soil. Rain lifts a little of that soil into a stream. The stream carries it downward, where it spreads into the lake. Some of it sinks, some feeds life, some becomes part of the bottom record. Each step is gentle, and none needs to be hurried. This process has continued far longer than any single night. It gives the Toba crater lake basin its deep sense of age. Not age as a number to memorize, but age as atmosphere. You feel it in the softened ridges, in the dark water, in the way mist settles without explanation. The basin seems to have exhaled for thousands upon thousands of years. The lake's surface can be restless for an hour, yet the basin remains calm in its larger form. Wind may wrinkle the water, rain may stipple it, clouds may hide the rim, but below those passing textures, the caldera holds its shape. It is a reminder that stillness does not mean nothing changes. It means change is happening at a pace wide enough to hold you. We drift through that thought, and the darkness becomes easier. The basin is not empty darkness. It is water holding a volcanic hollow. It is sediment holding memory. It is forest holding rain. It is stone holding warmth. When you hear the name Toba Crater Lake Basin, you can hear all of those layers inside it, soft and overlapping. There is also strangeness in the way scale folds inward. The lake is vast, yet a single droplet on a leaf belongs to it. Samosir is large, yet it is held inside the lake. The Caldera is enormous, yet it sits within the greater island of Sumatra, which sits within broader tectonic motion. Everything is nested. Everything has another quiet container around it. This nesting can be restful for the mind. You do not have to stand outside it and explain it. You can place yourself within it, as one small presence among larger and smaller systems. Your breath becomes part of the evening air. Your listening becomes part of the shore's silence. Your attention becomes one more soft thing the basin can hold. And as that sense of being held deepens, we rise only slightly from the hidden floor and let the lake's long history pass around us like dark water. The Toba Crater Lake Basin formed after an eruption often described as one of the largest in recent geologic time. That scale can sound overwhelming when stated plainly, so tonight we let it become spacious instead. The event belongs to a world of ash clouds, magma chambers, collapse, and long-distance deposits. Yet the place before us is water, mist, and green slopes under a quiet sky. Geology often asks us to hold two truths together. A landscape may be born from enormous energy and later become deeply peaceful. A basin may begin in collapse and become a cradle for life. A volcanic deposit may become soil, and soil may become forest. The strangeness of Toba is not contradiction. It is transformation. You can imagine the first rains falling on fresh volcanic material long after heat had faded. Water would have darkened the surface, found low places, and begun the slow work of alteration. Minerals would have changed. Loose particles would have shifted. Streams would have formed paths. Over time, the caldera collected more and more water until the lake became the dominant presence. The basin did not become what it is in a single moment. Lakes rise, shorelines adjust, sediment accumulates, and slopes respond. Uplift shaped Samosir, erosion softened margins. Water chemistry evolved with inputs from rock, rain, and living systems. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because it is an event that became an environment. That phrase can rest in the mind. An event became an environment. The sudden became slow. The deep heat became cool water. The collapse became a basin where clouds now look at themselves. You can breathe with that change, letting it lengthen your thoughts, letting each exhale settle like fine sediment through blue darkness. Near the lake margins, the environment feels immediate and sensory. Water touches stones with a small repeated sound. The air carries leaf smell and damp earth. Sun-warmed surfaces cool after dusk. Roots hold the bank. Reeds shift with tiny clicks and whispers. The vast geologic story is present there, but it is translated into ordinary textures. Farther out, the story becomes expansive again. Open water reflects the sky and hides the floor. The island lifts from the middle distance. The far rim curves in blue layers. You can feel the basin's origin without seeing any single source of it. Everything points back to the same deep structure, but gently, as if the landscape were speaking in a low voice. Scientists use mapping, rock chemistry, sediment cores, and geophysical measurements to understand places like Toba. Those tools are precise, and they reveal remarkable detail. But sleep listens differently. Tonight, we understand through image, sensation, and slow connection. The steep shore tells us about collapse. The island tells us about uplift. The sediment tells us about time. This kind of understanding is not less respectful. It is simply softer. You can let the facts become part of the atmosphere. The caldera is real. The volcanic history is real. The lake's depth and layering are real, yet they enter the body as calm, as wonder, as the feeling of floating over something older than memory. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because it keeps changing the scale of your attention. One moment you are thinking about tectonic plates and ancient magma. The next you notice mist beading on a leaf. Then you are back over deep water, imagining sediment in darkness. The place moves the mind up and down, like a slow current. As we follow that current, the lake becomes quieter again, and the next layer is not about how Toba formed, but how it continues to hold itself together through balance. Balance is everywhere in the Toba Crater Lake Basin. Water enters and leaves. Sediment arrives and settles. Nutrients rise and sink. Heat lingers below while cool air moves above. The rim encloses the lake, but streams keep it connected to the surrounding land. Nothing here is isolated, even when the basin feels removed from the world. The surface balance is easy to see. Wind roughens the lake, then calm returns. Rain darkens the water, then sunlight spreads again. Clouds hide the ridges, then the ridges reappear. These changes are visible, and they help the mind relax because they repeat without urgency. The basin is always moving back toward a broader steadiness. The deeper balances are slower. Water layers may form and weaken. Oxygen may be replenished in some periods and used in others. Organic matter sinks, decomposes, and releases nutrients. Minerals dissolve from rock and are carried into the lake. Each process affects the others, yet none needs to be imagined as sudden. In deep basins, change can be patient. You can think of the lake as breathing, but very slowly. Not with lungs and not on the scale of seconds. It breathes through mixing, rainfall, evaporation, inflow, outflow, warming, cooling, growth, decay, and settling. The breath of Toba is a landscape breath. You feel it in long cycles rather than quick motions. This is why the Toba Crater Lake Basin can feel so calming. Its strangeness is organized. The caldera shape, the island, the depth, the rim, the rain, and the sediment all belong to one system. It may be complex, but it is not chaotic in the way the sleepy mind fears. It is complex in the way a forest is complex, with patterns nested inside patterns. Near the shore, small waves polish stones. Some stones are dark, some pale, some softened by algae or mineral films. Your hand would feel cool water first, then smoothness, then the faint texture of living surfaces. The smell of the lake shifts with weather, sometimes clean and open, sometimes richer after rain has stirred the margins. Above the shore, slopes carry different kinds of moisture. Some water runs openly, some moves through soil, some is taken up by roots and later released through leaves. Some evaporates and returns to cloud. The basin is part of a water cycle that rises, falls, sinks, and rises again. It is not a closed bowl. It is a gathering place within motion. Samosir participates in this balance too. Rain falls on the island, drains toward the lake, feeds small streams and nearshore habitats, and returns material to the water. The island is not a decoration in the center. It is an active landform within the basin, a raised part of the caldera floor that now has its own slopes, soils, vegetation, and water paths. When you look at Samosir through evening haze, you are seeing uplift made gentle by time. Its ridges do not need to announce their origin. They simply rise from water, green and quiet. The Toba Crater Lake Basin holds them the way a dream holds a remembered shape, clear enough to feel, soft enough to let go. The lake's clarity can vary with season, weather, runoff, and biological activity. Sometimes the water may appear deep blue. Sometimes greenish tones show where life and suspended particles change the way light moves. Near river mouths, it may become cloudier. Out in deeper areas, it can feel more open and dark. Color is another slow language of the basin. You follow that color downward in thought. Blue near the surface, green where life catches light, gray where cloud reflection spreads, black where depth receives everything. The changes are not sharp bands, but gradual shifts, like breath moving from waking into sleep. The lake teaches transition by never making one boundary too hard. And as the colors fade into each other, we move toward the quietest part of the basin's strangeness, the way it makes vast geologic time feel intimate. Geologic time is usually difficult to feel. It is too large, too slow, too far beyond ordinary days. But in the Toba Crater Lake Basin, time has a surface you can almost touch. It is in the old Caldera rim under forest. It is in the island lifted from the lake. It is in the sediment falling grain by grain. It is in the softened volcanic slopes after countless rains. You do not have to count the years exactly to feel them. Numbers can become too bright for sleep. Instead, imagine repeated evenings over the lake, mist forming and lifting, rain falling and clearing, leaves growing and dropping, streams carrying fine sediment, fish moving through green shallows. The basin remains, but every day adds something quiet to it. This is where the place becomes intimate. The same processes that shape continents also appear in small, touchable forms. Plate motion becomes a volcanic arc. A volcanic arc becomes a lake. A lake becomes a shoreline stone wet under your hand. Vastness arrives as cool water on skin. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because it refuses to stay at one distance. It is planetary, and it is close. It belongs to deep earth processes, yet it can be known through mist on your face. It was shaped by magma chambers, but tonight it is also shaped by the sound of a small wave arriving at shore. There is a kind of kindness in that closeness. Not a human kindness, but the ease of a place that lets you rest beside it. The basin does not explain itself all at once. It offers pieces. A slope, a reflection, a warm spring, a deep shadow, a line of cloud over the rim. Each piece is enough for the moment. When the mind is tired, this is a good way to travel, not by grasping but by receiving. You receive the cool air. You receive the old shape of the caldera. You receive the idea of sediment settling in darkness. You receive the island rising gently from the lake. There is nothing here that asks you to hurry. The basin's age also softens the idea of strangeness. At first, strange may mean unfamiliar. Then it begins to mean layered, rare, and quietly beyond ordinary scale. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because it shows how Earth can make a place that feels almost impossible, then leave it to rain, moss, fish, cloud, and time. You may picture the lake at dawn now, though we remain in the dark. Pale light returns slowly to the high rim. Mist lifts from water in thin layers. The surface holds a soft silver sheen. Sumatra appears again from shadow. The basin reveals itself gradually, as if it had been there all night, waiting without impatience. That waiting quality belongs to deep landscapes. Ancient forests have it, glacial valleys have it, desert basins have it. Toba has it in a volcanic, watery form. The lake waits in its hollow. The rim waits under cloud. The floor waits under sediment. Waiting is not emptiness here. It is presence without demand. As your attention grows quieter, the science and the sensation begin to merge. Caldera means hollow. Lake means water gathered. Resurgence means uplift after collapse. Sediment means time settling. Rain means renewal. These words no longer feel separate from the cool air and dark water. They become part of the same low, slow music. And as that music carries us, we drift once more toward the center, where the basin's nested shapes can be felt all around us without needing to be seen. At the center of the Toba Crater Lake Basin, imagination has room to widen. Around you is water. Beneath you is depth. In the distance is Sumatra, though night may hide it. Beyond that is the Caldera rim, rising as a dark boundary against the sky. Beyond the rim are highlands, forests, and the larger island. Beneath all of it, the earth holds heat and structure. This nesting gives Toba a dreamlike quality, a lake inside a caldera, an island inside a lake, a dome inside a collapse, a quiet surface above deep volcanic history. Each layer makes sense, yet the whole arrangement feels unusual, almost like a landscape folded inward around its own memory. You can rest inside that folding. The water around you is smooth now. Perhaps the wind has eased. The surface lifts only in small, slow motions, each one catching a little darkness and letting it go. The smell is faint, mostly fresh water and cool air. The sound is low, nearly continuous, a soft meeting of lake and unseen shore. Your thoughts begin to stretch out and thin. Why is the Toba Crater Lake Basin so strange? Because it is both enormous and hidden in plain sight. Because a volcanic collapse became one of the world's great lake basins. Because the floor rose again to form Samosir. Because deep water now covers a structure born from fire. Because weather has turned ash and rock into green, breathing landscape. But even those answers are only stepping stones. The deeper answer is felt rather than stated. Toba is strange because it holds opposites without tension. Fire and water, collapse and uplift, depth and reflection, mountain air and inland sea, ancient violence and present calm. The basin gathers these contrasts and lets them settle into one wide, quiet form. You can let those paired ideas drift by without holding them. Fire and water, then they fade. Collapse and uplift, then they fade. Depth and reflection, then they fade. The lake remains. Your breathing remains. The darkness remains. Nothing needs to be solved before sleep can come. The basin is strange, and it is peaceful at the same time. Above, if clouds part, stars may appear again. They seem small compared with the dark lake, though they are not small at all. Reflection makes them tremble. A moving ripple lengthens one point of light, breaks it, and releases it. The lake takes the sky into itself imperfectly, which is the only way water can hold anything. Below, sediment continues its unseen fall. A tiny grain descends through water, slower than thought. It may have come from a slope, a stream, a leaf surface, or an old volcanic layer softened by rain. Now it turns in darkness, finds the bottom, and becomes part of the basin's long, quiet memory. This is how landscapes keep themselves. We stay with that falling grain for a while. It asks nothing. It hurries nowhere. It is carried by gravity and water, by the simplest forces, toward a resting place that has been receiving such arrivals for ages. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes understandable through this one motion, downward, gentle, inevitable, and calm. The lake's deep water holds a similar motion inside you. Your thoughts descend. The day loosens. The surface brightness of memory dims. What remains is slower and less crowded. A rim of mountains, a dark lake, an island in shadow, a basin made by earth and softened by weather, a place large enough to contain whatever is ready to settle. And below that settling thought, the water changes again, not in color now, but in feeling, becoming heavier, softer, and more completely still. And below that settling thought, the water changes again, not in color now, but in feeling, becoming heavier, softer, and more completely still. You are no longer near the lively edge of reflection, where wind and sky keep touching the surface. We drift through the imagined depth of the Toba Crater Lake Basin, where motion becomes a low, interior thing. Even the idea of sound seems to thicken and slow around you. At this depth, the lake is less a view than a presence. You do not look across it anymore. You feel it above and around you, layer after layer, a vast freshwater body resting inside the old volcanic hollow. The coolness is steady here, with no sun-warmed edge to it. It has the even touch of water that has been away from daylight for a long time. The Toba Crater Lake Basin has this strange inwardness because of its depth and shape. A broad, shallow lake often belongs to the wind, changing quickly with each passing weather pattern. A deep Caldera lake has places the wind can only influence indirectly. The upper layer may move, brighten, and cool, while the deeper water keeps its slower rhythm below. You can sense that separation as a kind of calm. In the mind, we pass through suspended particles, each one faint in the last traces of blue. Some are mineral grains from the Caldera slopes. Some are fragments of organic life from the bright water above. Some may be so small they seem almost weightless, yet gravity is always with them. Their descent is one of the lake's most patient forms of movement. There is comfort in the way everything finds a level. Warm water rests where it is light enough to rest. Cold water settles where it belongs. Sediment moves downward. Leaves return to soil or silt. The basin receives these motions without preference. You can let your own thoughts do the same, sinking to whatever depth feels natural tonight. The floor below is not flat in a simple way. The caldera has an old, complicated foundation, shaped by collapse, uplift, and later deposits. Sediment smooths much of it, but underneath that softness are buried forms, old slopes, fractures, and volcanic structures. The visible piece of the lake is spread over a hidden architecture. That is part of why Toba feels so unusual. You may imagine the lakebed as a muted landscape beneath the water, with gentle plains of fine sediment and steeper submerged sides rising toward the walls. No sunlight reaches the lowest places. The darkness is complete, but not empty. It contains texture, temperature, chemistry, and the long memory of the basin. It contains the quiet work of settling. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is a place where the surface and the floor speak different languages. The surface speaks in reflections, ripples, cloud color, and passing wind. The floor speaks in layers, mineral grains, buried ash, and slow chemical change. Between them is the water column, carrying messages downward and upward in its own unhurried way. When organic matter sinks into deeper water, it begins to change. Tiny organisms break it down. Oxygen may be used, nutrients may be released. Some material returns to the cycle of life, while some becomes buried in sediment. This is not dramatic work, it is the quiet housekeeping of a lake, carried out in darkness and depth. You can picture a single fragment of leaf descending from a forested slope. It falls into a stream, darkens with water, breaks into smaller pieces, and eventually reaches the lake. Perhaps some of it feeds small life near shore. Perhaps another part sinks farther out, joining silt on the deep floor. The basin turns the leaf into memory, and memory into landscape. As we drift close to that thought, the lake seems to slow even more, and the old caldera begins to feel like a great instrument tuned by water. The shape of the Toba Crater Lake Basin affects how water moves, how sound travels, and how the surface responds to wind. A basin is never only a container. Its slopes, depths, and openings guide every current that passes through it. Here, the long volcanic hollow gives the lake a stretched, spacious feeling, with shorelines far enough apart to make the water feel almost ocean-like. Wind can push the upper water across the lake, piling it subtly toward one side, then allowing it to return. These motions can create internal waves between layers of different temperature and density. You would not see them as ordinary surface waves. They move within the lake, hidden and slow, like breath shifting under a blanket. The basin's depth gives such motions room to exist. This is another soft strangeness of Toba. Not all movement is visible. Some of the lake's largest motions may take place beneath a surface that appears calm. Water can tilt, mix, and pulse internally, guided by density, wind, and the shape of the caldera. We do not need to measure it tonight. We can simply feel the idea of hidden motion inside stillness. You may be floating under a sky that looks perfectly quiet, while below, a long, slow wave moves along the boundary between warmer and cooler water. It travels without foam. It makes no shoreline crash in the ordinary sense. It is a movement of layers, a deep adjustment. The lake settles itself in a language too slow for hurried attention. The Toba Crater Lake Basin also gathers currents from streams and rainfall. Cooler inflows may slide along certain depths, depending on their temperature and sediment load. Warmer, lighter water may spread near the surface. Dense sediment-rich water can sometimes move downward along slopes, carrying fine material toward deeper areas. Each current finds its place by weight. There is something soothing in this sorting. The lake does not argue with gravity. It lets water arrange itself. It lets suspended matter fall. It lets warmth rise and coldness rest below. In the sleepy mind, this becomes a lesson without words. You do not have to force stillness. You can settle by becoming gently aware of what already draws downward. If you listen from the shore, the basin's sighs may make sound feel distant and softened, a wave against stone, wind across leaves, rain approaching over water. The far side of the lake may be too far for detail, so the ear receives only low blended impressions. Sound becomes less like information and more like texture, wrapping the basin in a fine hush. At night, the hush deepens. The caldera rim holds back some of the outer world, while the wide water smooths what remains. You can imagine the lake as a dark, resonant bowl. It does not ring sharply. It hums with almost silence. The Toba crater lake basin becomes a place where even geology seems to speak quietly. The slopes around the lake are part of that soundscape. Forest absorbs and softens noise. Wet leaves muffle footsteps. Soil dampens movement. Streams speak only where stones give them small voices. Mist adds another layer of quiet, as if the air itself has become a soft material. We move through it slowly, with no need to reach anywhere. As the hidden motions continue below us, we drift toward the shore again, where the basin's strangeness can be touched in stone, soil, and warm, damp air. The shore of the Toba crater lake basin is a meeting place between vastness and detail. From the open water, it may look like a green line. Up close, it becomes many small surfaces, wet stones, roots, reeds, fallen leaves, mineral grains, and shallow water holding faint light. You can lower your hand in imagination and feel the coolness gather around your fingers. The stones along the shore have traveled through different stories. Some may come from volcanic deposits weathered from the slopes. Some may have been carried by streams. Some may have rested near the water for years, turned and smoothed by waves. Their colors are quiet, dark gray, brown, pale tan, muted red, softened by wetness and shade. Every shoreline stone is part of the basin's long rearrangement. Rock breaks, particles move. Waves sort them by size and weight. Fine material drifts farther out. Coarser grains remain near the edge. Over time, beaches, small bars, and underwater shelves form, shift and soften. The Toba crater lake basin is always remaking its margins. You can smell this edge clearly. Fresh water has a clean, open scent, but the shore adds earth, plant matter, and mineral dampness. After rain, the smell grows deeper, as if the forest has leaned closer to the lake. Wet bark, leaf litter, and volcanic soil blend into the air. The basin becomes something you can breathe. Near shore, life is often more visible. Aquatic plants may take root where light can still reach the bottom. Small animals find shelter among stems, stones, and submerged wood. Fish move in and out of the shallows, sometimes catching light on their backs before turning away. Insects skim the surface, leaving little dimples that widen and disappear. The Toba crater lake basin may be vast, but much of its living edge is made of these small shelters. A root tangle becomes a refuge. A stone holds algae. A reed stem gives shade. A slow eddy gathers food. The large geological bowl has become a collection of tiny homes, each one shaped by water level, light, and texture. You start to notice that the lake's calm is not emptiness, but coordination. Every small creature responds to conditions around it. Light changes and movement changes. Rain falls, and the water near shore cools or clouds. Nutrients arrive, and tiny life responds. A basin born from deep earth processes now depends, moment by moment, on delicate exchanges near its edges. This is why the landscape feels both ancient and alive. The caldera gives the lake its great form, but the shoreline gives it breath. You can rest your attention on the smallest things and still remain inside the largest story. A water insect touching the surface belongs to the same basin as the buried volcanic floor. The shore also shows how time has softened the old volcanic structure. Where walls were once steeper or more bare, rain and vegetation have worked them down. Sediment collects at the base of slopes. Plants stabilize some areas and loosen others through root growth and decay. The lake edge becomes a slow negotiation between water and land. We sit with that negotiation for a while. A small wave arrives, lifts against stone, and withdraws. Another follows. The pattern is steady enough for sleep, but not mechanical. Each wave is shaped by wind, depth, shoreline angle, and the wave before it. The Toba Crater Lake Basin turns these simple motions into a soft rhythm against the margins. As the shoreline darkens and the water takes back the last reflections, we move along the base of the slopes, where forest and caldera meet. The forested slopes around the Toba Crater Lake Basin are part of its quiet strangeness. They cover the volcanic frame with shade, roots, leaves, and moisture. From a distance, the slopes may seem like a soft green surface. Inside them, water is constantly moving, dripping from leaves, sinking into soil, gathering in small channels and making its way toward the lake. You can feel the air become cooler under the trees. It smells of wet bark, humus, fern, moss, and mineral earth. The ground is springy in places where leaf litter has gathered. Somewhere close, water slips down over stone in a thin, clear thread. The lake is still visible through openings, a blue-gray brightness below the trees. Forest changes the way rain reaches the basin. Leaves break the fall of drops. Branches hold moisture. Roots anchor soil, and organic matter helps water soak in rather than rush away all at once. This slows erosion in many places and shapes the timing of stream flow. The lake receives the forest's water gradually, filtered through living and decaying material. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because a volcanic landform now depends so intimately on plant life. The old ash and rock provide mineral foundations. The vegetation adds structure, shade, and soil. Together they make slopes that are not simply geological and not simply ecological. They are both at once, fused by rain and time. You may imagine touching a mossy stone on one of these slopes. It is cool, damp, and slightly rough beneath the green softness. The stone may come from volcanic material laid down long ago, yet now it holds tiny plants and trapped moisture. This is one of the quietest transformations in the basin. Hard origin becomes soft surface. Small streams cut through the slopes, often hidden until you are near them. They carry the sound of water over roots and stones. Some are clear and narrow. Others become clouded after rain, carrying fine sediment from disturbed soil or exposed deposits. Each stream is a small messenger, linking ridge, forest, shore, and deep lake. As streams enter the lake, they create subtle differences in temperature, clarity, and nutrients. A stream mouth may attract fish or support denser plant growth nearby. Fine sediment settles outward in a fan. Organic matter gathers in the shallows. Over time, these small inputs help build the ecological texture of the basin's edge. The forest also breathes into the lake through falling leaves. A leaf touches the surface and floats for a while, its veins darkening as water enters. Then it sinks, or breaks apart, or is used by organisms near shore. The Toba Crater Lake Basin receives this leaf as gently as it receives rain. Nothing is too small to become part of the whole. There is a slow intimacy in this exchange. The lake reflects the forest, and the forest feeds the lake. The volcanic basin holds them both. You are not watching separate systems, but one continuous landscape, with water moving through air, leaf, soil, stream, and depth. It is strange because it is so complete, so enclosed, and yet still open to the sky. As we follow one stream downward in thought, we come back to the water's edge and let it carry us again toward the wide open basin. Out on the open water of the Toba Crater Lake Basin, the shore becomes distant and the lake's scale returns. The surface stretches outward with a subdued shine, and the far ridges become layered silhouettes. You feel the basin widen under the sky. The air is cooler away from land, with a faint clean scent rising from the water. Here the island and rim arrange themselves like slow shapes in a dream. Samosir may lie to one side, not merely sitting on the lake, but rising from its volcanic interior. The rim beyond it marks the older collapse. The water between them fills the space that time has made. You can look from one to the other and feel the Earth's movements held in stillness. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is not strange in a loud way. It is strange in the way a quiet fact becomes more astonishing the longer you sit with it. The lake is inside a caldera. The island is a raised part of that caldera. The slopes are old volcanic deposits, softened by rain. The water is deep enough to hide an entire submerged landscape. Open water changes your sense of direction. Without nearby shore details, your body relies on wind, light, and the slow motion of the surface. The basin becomes less like a map and more like an atmosphere. You know there is land around you, but the lake asks you to feel space rather than measure it. That is restful in its own way. The science of such space is physical, but it becomes emotional when you are quiet. Fetch, depth, and wind influence waves. Basin shape guides circulation. Temperature affects density. Sediment records change. These are plain processes, yet together they create the feeling of being held by a large, old, watery hollow. Knowledge does not break the spell. It deepens it. You can imagine the water beneath you as a long, transparent darkness. The upper layer remembers the sky. The middle layer loses color. The lower layer holds cold and silence. Far below, sediment lies undisturbed except for the faint work of organisms and chemistry. The lake is vertical as much as horizontal, and that verticality gives Toba its hidden grandeur. A shallow landscape shows most of itself at once. A deep lake never does. It withholds. It lets the surface be beautiful, while keeping the floor out of sight. The Toba Crater Lake Basin has this gentle reserve, this sense that most of what matters is beneath appearance. For sleep, that hiddenness can feel like permission to stop searching. Above the water, clouds move slowly across the caldera. Their shadows pass over the lake as broad dark patches, changing the color without touching the depth. A shadow reaches you, cools the light, and drifts onward. Then a pale opening returns. The lake accepts both shadow and brightness with the same quiet ease. If rain begins again, the open surface becomes textured everywhere. Each drop marks the lake for an instant, then vanishes into it. The sound is soft and innumerable, a fine whispering spread across miles of water. You can close your eyes and still feel the basin through that sound, wide, enclosed, and deeply receptive. As the rain thins, the open water darkens into evening once more, and we turn towards Sumatra, where the basin's uplifted heart rests in the lake. Sumatra, within the Toba Crater Lake Basin, gives the landscape its most unusual center. Many lakes have islands, but this one carries a deeper meaning. It is tied to the caldera floor rising again after collapse, a resurgent form made visible above the water. In the calm of evening it appears simply as land, but its origin is written into the basin's structure. We approach it slowly across darkening water. The shoreline comes forward in layers, first as a shadow, then as slopes, then as individual trees and uneven edges. The water near the island may sound different, meeting stones and small beaches with a closer rhythm. The air carries more earth again, more vegetation, more damp warmth released from land after day. To understand Sumatra gently, imagine the floor of the caldera responding after the great emptying beneath it. Heat remained. Material shifted. The crust adjusted. Part of the floor rose into a broad dome, later shaped by water, erosion, and weather. This uplift was not a single simple gesture, but a long geological response, part of the basin settling into a new form. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes especially strange here because collapse and uplift occupy the same view. The lake exists because ground lowered. The island exists because ground rose. You can stand at the shore of Sumatra and look out across the water toward the rim, seeing both motions at once, downward and upward, held together by still water. The island's slopes have their own small watersheds. Rain falls, gathers, and moves back toward the lake. Soil forms from volcanic material and organic matter. Plants root into that soil. Streams and wet gullies mark the land. The resurgent dome has become a living place, shaped now by the same slow processes that shape the outer walls. You can picture walking only a few quiet steps inland from the shore, though we keep the pace of drifting. The ground rises gently. Leaves shift overhead. The lake remains visible through trees, reflecting a paler piece of sky. The air smells of damp soil and fresh water. Behind everything is the knowledge that this island is not separate from the basin, but part of its lifted floor. This makes the island feel less like an object and more like a revelation. It shows what the lake hides elsewhere. Beneath the water, the Caldera floor has shape, structure, and history. At Samosia, a portion of that hidden floor rises into air, carrying the deep interior of the basin into sight. You can rest your eyes there without needing to explain every contour. Along the shoreline, small waves keep touching the island, as if reminding it of the water that surrounds its origin. The rhythm is simple. Water arrives, brightens the stones, and withdraws. A strand of plant matter moves back and forth. A small fish turns in the shallows. The geologic dome meets the daily lake in these little gestures. The Toba Crater Lake Basin holds Samosia in a way that feels almost impossible when you think too hard, and perfectly natural when you simply look. The island belongs there because it grew from the basin's own history. It interrupts the open water, yet completes the story. Without it, Toba would still be vast. With it, Toba becomes layered and inwardly strange. As darkness gathers around Samosia's edges, we leave the island resting in the lake and drift toward the far rim, where the basin's outer boundary rises into night. The far rim of the Toba Crater Lake Basin can appear as a quiet wall of shadow after sunset. It does not need detail to be present. Its outline alone tells you that the lake is held. Above it, clouds may remain pale for a little while, catching the last light. Below it, the water becomes dark enough to erase distance. Rims of calderas are not always smooth circles. They are shaped by the original collapse, by older structures, by later faulting, and by the long patience of erosion. Toba's rim feels wide and irregular, more like a family of ridges than a single line. From the lake, this complexity softens into layered darkness, but the shape still guides the atmosphere of the basin. You can feel the rim as shelter, though it is not shelter in a human-built sense. It shapes wind. It catches rain. It frames the sky. It gives the lake a sense of inwardness. The Toba Crater Lake Basin feels strange, because the horizon is not open in every direction. It is held by land that remembers volcanic collapse. At night, the rim can make the stars feel contained above the water. The sky opens upward, but the dark boundary around the lake keeps attention within the basin. Your thoughts do not scatter far. They circle slowly, returning to the island, the water, the deep floor, the old ash, the warm springs, the slopes breathing in mist. The rocks of the rim have been weathered for so long that their volcanic origin may be hidden under green life. This is one of the basin's recurring themes. Origin is buried, softened, transformed, but not erased. Under forest and soil, the old materials remain. Under water, the caldera floor remains. Under quiet, the deep story remains. You may imagine rain beginning high on the rim. At first it touches leaves, then it darkens soil. It gathers in tiny channels. It moves downward through roots, stones and gullies. By the time it reaches the lake, it has become part of the basin's circulation. The journey from cloud to lake is short in space, but rich in contact. In places, the rim slopes may show scars of erosion or landslip, later softened by vegetation. These are natural parts of steep, wet landscapes. Gravity works gently, but continuously. Water adds weight, loosens material, and carries it downslope. The lake receives the result. Over enough time, the rim is lowered, shaped, and written into the sediment below. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is therefore not a static monument. It is an active landscape, though much of its activity is quiet enough to miss. A ridge sheds sediment. A stream shifts course slightly. A shoreline changes texture. A layer forms at the lake bottom. The basin continues to become itself, even in stillness. This is a soothing idea. You do not need motion to be quick for it to be real. You do not need change to be visible for it to matter. The rim in darkness, the lake below, and the sediment floor all participate in slow becoming. The night holds that becoming without display. As the rim fades into a deeper darkness, we let our attention sink back through time, toward the ancient ash that spread beyond the basin and then returned, grain by grain, to soil and water. Ash is one of the quiet keys to the Toba Crater Lake Basin. In its first form, it was volcanic material carried outward and laid down across land and water. In its later forms, it became deposit, slope, soil, dust, sediment, and mineral background. Tonight we meet it not as a cloud, but as softened particles resting under forest and lake. Volcanic ash can be fine, almost powdery, and rich in glassy fragments that change over time. Weather alters it, water moves through it, minerals form, plants root in the developing soil. The same material that once marked a geologic event can become a foundation for growth. Toba's strangeness includes this slow conversion from erupted matter to living ground. You can imagine ash layers beneath your feet near the basin, no longer loose in the air, but settled and transformed. They may be mixed with organic matter, clay, and later sediments. Roots pass through them. Rain carries dissolved elements from them. Streams cut into them and move tiny pieces toward the lake. The old eruption becomes part of everyday cycles. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is surrounded by land that carries these altered deposits in different ways. Some surfaces have been deeply weathered. Some have been eroded. Some have been buried by later soil. The landscape does not preserve the past like a museum case. It composts it, reshapes it, and folds it into the present. There is a softness in thinking of ash this way, not as something suspended, but as something resting. It lies in layers, it breaks down, it feeds soil chemistry, it becomes part of slopes where rain falls and leaves decay, it moves into the lake and settles again. The basin's volcanic history keeps returning to the bottom in ever finer forms. At the lake floor, ash-derived particles may lie among other sediments, indistinguishable without careful study. They no longer announce themselves. They are part of the deep quiet. In darkness, a grain from an old volcanic deposit rests beside pollen, clay, and organic matter. Together, they make the layered softness beneath the water. You can feel how this changes the meaning of strangeness. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange not because it is separate from ordinary nature, but because ordinary nature has taken hold of an extraordinary beginning. Rain, roots, microbes, waves, and time have all entered the story. They have made the volcanic basin habitable, green, and calm. The smell of wet volcanic soil can be rich and mineral, especially after rain. It is not a sharp scent. It rises slowly, mixed with leaf litter and living roots. If you kneel near a slope, the ground may feel cool and slightly dense with moisture. The basin's past is under your hands, softened enough to hold life. This softening is continuous. Every season adds another layer of change. Leaves fall, roots grow and die. Streams carry small loads. Shorelines receive them. The lake holds them. Far below, sediment becomes thicker by almost unnoticeable increments. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is an archive made by the same quiet processes that invite sleep. And as ash becomes soil, and soil becomes forest, we drift with the water that carries all these transformations back toward the lake's deep interior. Water is the basin's translator. It takes minerals from rock, loosened particles from slopes, organic matter from forest, warmth from springs, and light from the sky. It carries them into relation. In the Toba Crater Lake Basin, water is not just filling space, it is connecting every part of the Caldera's strange and gentle system. You can follow a raindrop from cloud to lake. It falls cold on a leaf, trembles there and slips down the stem. It enters moss, then soil, then a narrow thread of runoff. It joins other drops in a small stream, moving over dark stones. At last it reaches the lake, where its separate path disappears into the hole. That disappearance is peaceful. The drop is not lost in a sad way. It becomes lake water. It becomes part of reflection, depth, wave, mist, and current. It may warm near the surface, cool at night, evaporate into cloud, or sink into a deeper layer. The basin gives it more than one future, all of them slow. The Toba Crater Lake Basin depends on countless such arrivals. No single stream or shower explains the lake, yet all of them together sustain it. This is true of many landscapes, but here the effect feels especially vivid because the caldera is so enclosed and the water so expansive. Everything seems to move inward toward the blue hollow. Water also carries dissolved chemistry. As it passes through volcanic rocks and soils, it takes in ions and fine material. These influence the lake's composition, its clarity, its nutrients, and its suitability for different kinds of life. The chemistry is not something separate from the beauty. It is one reason the water has the character it has. You do not need to name every mineral tonight. It is enough to know that water remembers what it touches. It moves through leaf litter, soil, rock, and warmth, then enters the lake changed by each contact. When you look at the surface, you are seeing a blend of many small histories. The lake is transparent only in places. In truth, it is full of invisible traces. Those traces shape life. Tiny organisms use nutrients. Plants respond to light and chemistry. Fish respond to food, oxygen, temperature, and shelter. Microbes work in sediment and water. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes an ecosystem because geology and water make conditions, and life answers them in countless modest ways. There is no need for any creature here to become a symbol. A fish is a fish, a plankton cell is a plankton cell. A reed is a reed, yet each one belongs to a deep volcanic basin filled with fresh water and weather. Their ordinary existence makes the extraordinary landscape feel complete. They are the small breaths of a large place. As we move over the lake at night, you can imagine the water carrying all of this invisibly beneath us. Minerals, warmth, nutrients, fine sediment, and living cells are suspended in the dark. The surface shows only starlight and shadow. The deeper story continues without display. This hidden fullness is one of Toba's most restful qualities. And as the hidden fullness gathers below, we turn toward the morning that will come softly over the basin without breaking its quiet. Before dawn, the Toba Crater Lake Basin can feel suspended between water and cloud. The air is cool, and the lake is dark enough to merge with the slopes. Only the faintest difference separates surface from sky. Mist gathers where temperature, moisture, and stillness meet. You breathe in damp air, and the body understands morning before the eyes do. This is a delicate hour. The lake has released some warmth into the night air. The land has cooled. Moisture condenses in low places and over water. The basin's shape helps hold that moisture, letting mist linger in the hollow. What looks like mystery is also physics, made visible in the softest possible way. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange, because even its atmosphere seems shaped by the caldera. The rim contains air movement. The lake supplies moisture, and the highland setting cools the night. Together, they create veils, clouds, and dim layers of light. The basin is not only geological and hydrological. It is atmospheric, a place where air has a local memory. As dawn approaches, the first light touches the upper ridges before it reaches the water. The rim appears in gray outline. Then Samosir emerges as a darker mass within the lake. The surface lightens slowly, not all at once, but in widening patches. You can feel the basin returning to visibility, layer after layer. Birds may begin near the shore, their calls softened by mist. Insects stir. Leaves release beads of water. Small waves begin to show themselves again as the light strengthens. The lake takes on color, first gray, then blue, then a greenish tone near shallows. The Toba Crater Lake Basin wakes without hurrying, and we remain quiet enough to notice. Morning does not erase the depth, it only covers it with brightness. Beneath the new light, the same sediment lies below. The same cold water rests in deeper layers. The same volcanic structure holds the lake in its vast shape. This is another comfort of Toba. Surface conditions change, but the deeper presence remains steady. You can imagine sitting near the water as mist thins. The stones are damp. The air smells of fresh water and leaves. A low cloud lifts from the slope and breaks into pieces. Across the lake, the far rim becomes clearer. The whole basin seems to inhale, not quickly, but with a patient expansion into day. The science of mist and light only makes the scene gentler. Water vapor condenses when air cools enough. Droplets scatter light, making edges blur and distances soften. As the sun rises, warmth changes the balance, and mist lifts or dissolves. The process is ordinary, but inside the caldera, it becomes part of the basin's identity. The Toba Crater Lake Basin does not feel strange because it is unnatural. It feels strange because natural processes have aligned here in a rare arrangement. Volcanic collapse made the hollow, uplift made the island, rain made the lake, weather made the mist, life made the edges green, time made everything seem inevitable. As the morning brightens, we do not leave the basin, but drift into another layer of attention, where the lake's calm surface reflects the sky while hiding the old depths below. As the morning brightens, we do not leave the basin, but drift into another layer of attention, where the lake's calm surface reflects the sky while hiding the old depths below. The Toba Crater Lake Basin opens again in blue and gray, with Samosir resting quietly inside it and the far rim lifting through the thinning mist. You can feel how much of the place is visible now and how much remains hidden under water, soil, cloud, and time. Sunlight spreads over the surface in a way that makes the lake seem simple for a moment. It becomes a shining sheet, a broad highland mirror held between green slopes. But as we stay with it, the simplicity fades into depth again. The reflection is only the topmost layer. Beneath it, water thickens into shadow, and beneath that, sediment rests on the old Caldera floor. This is part of the strangeness of Toba. It can look peaceful enough to understand at a glance, yet every glance rests on a complicated foundation. The lake's surface gives the eye a calm answer. The basin underneath keeps adding questions softly. Why is there an island in the middle? Why are the shores so widely spaced? Why does the land feel both sunken and raised? We let those questions drift rather than tighten. The answers are in the shapes themselves. The island rises because the caldera floor rose. The lake spreads wide because the volcanic hollow is immense. The slopes curve around it because the ground settled into a basin. The water is there because rain and rivers kept arriving, year after year with no hurry. A breeze moves across the morning surface. It darkens one patch of water, brightens another, and sends small ripples toward the shore. The sound is faint from where we drift, but you can imagine it clearly, the quiet brushing of wavelets against stone. The air smells clean and damp. The basin feels awake but still slow enough for sleep. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is not strange in isolation. It belongs to the volcanic arc of Sumatra, where deep earth movement feeds volcanic systems over long spans of time. But Toba's scale, its lake, its resurgent island, and its softened green enclosure give it a special inwardness. It feels less like a single volcano and more like a whole world left behind by one. You can picture the deeper forces beneath the region as extremely slow. Plates move, rocks bend, fluids rise, heat gathers, and magma forms under conditions far below ordinary sight. None of this needs to feel restless tonight. It is simply the hidden foundation of the landscape, the low geological background that allowed the basin to become what it is. Above that deep setting, rain has done the gentler visible work. Rain feeds streams, nourishes forest, fills the lake, and pulls the old volcanic material into new forms. If fire created the possibility of Toba, water made the present place. Water made the mirror, the mist, the shoreline, the cool air, and the life that moves through the margins. The more you rest with the basin, the more it seems to be made from contrasts that have learned to coexist. Deep heat below, cool water above, collapse below the lake, uplift in Samosir. Steep volcanic walls, softened by vegetation, ancient ash turned to soil. A rare geologic form, now ordinary enough for morning light to touch without ceremony. And as the breeze carries small ripples across the lake, we follow them toward the places where the basin's water meets the sky and begins its slow return to cloud. Evaporation is nearly invisible, but it is always part of the Toba Crater Lake Basin. The lake gives water back to the air molecule by molecule, especially when sun and wind pass over its surface. You do not see a stream rising, only a slight softness in the air, a dampness that belongs to large water. The lake is breathing upward as well as receiving rain. That upward movement is one of the quietest cycles here. Water falls from clouds, enters streams, gathers in the lake, rests, warms, and rises again. Some of it may become mist over the basin. Some may join clouds over the highlands. Some may fall again nearby, returning to the slopes that feed the lake. The basin lives inside repetition. You can feel that repetition in the air against your face. It is cool, but not dry. The moisture has a light touch, softening the skin, softening the outlines of distant ridges. The smell is fresh water and leaves, with a faint mineral trace after rain. Around Toba, even the air seems to have passed through water before reaching you. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because the water cycle is so visibly enclosed by landform. In many places, water disappears into broad plains or distant rivers, but here the caldera gathers attention inward. Cloud, rain, slope, stream, lake, mist, and cloud again feel close together. You can almost imagine them as one slow circular motion. The surface of the lake receives sunlight now, and a few bright paths open where ripples face the sun. They are not harsh. They shimmer and fade, changing with every small wave. Beneath them, the water remains darker. The lake never gives itself entirely to brightness. Even in morning, it keeps a deep, private blue below. This partly comes from depth, partly from suspended material, and partly from the way light behaves in water. Red and warmer tones fade quickly as light travels downward, while blue and green penetrate farther. In a deep lake, color becomes a measure of distance from air and sun. The Toba Crater Lake Basin wears its depth as color. You can watch the water near the shore shift from transparent shallows to green, then to deeper blue farther out. The change is gradual, like a thought becoming sleep. Stones are visible at first, then blurred. Plant stems bend under the surface, then vanish. Beyond that, the lake hides itself, and the hiddenness feels calm. Along the margins, sunlight wakes the shallow life. Small fish move through brighter water. Insects pass close to the surface. Plants release oxygen as they photosynthesize, though the bubbles may be too small to notice. Microorganisms respond to light in their own tiny cycles. The volcanic basin becomes a morning habitat again, quietly active under the reflective sky. There is a kind of tenderness in the contrast. The Toba Crater Lake Basin was shaped by forces too large to feel directly, yet its present life depends on small daily changes. A cloud passing over the sun can alter the light for plankton. Rain can cool a shallow bay. A fallen branch can shelter small creatures. The enormous and the delicate are never separate here. As the sun lifts higher, the mist thins and we drift toward the old shorelines and slopes that show how the lake has shifted through time. Lake levels are never perfectly still across long spans of time. In the Toba Crater Lake Basin, water has risen and fallen with climate, rainfall, outflow, evaporation, and changes in the surrounding landscape. Shorelines may leave traces, benches, terraces, sediments, and subtle forms cut or built by water. These traces are quiet, but they help tell the basin's story. You can imagine an older shoreline above the present lake, a faint line along a slope where water once lingered. It may be softened now by vegetation and weather. Roots cross it, soil covers it, rain has blurred its edges, yet the land may still remember where waves once touched, just as your body remembers the shape of a dream after waking. In a deep volcanic basin, changes in lake level alter many things at once. The shoreline moves. Shallow habitats expand or shrink. Streams cut new paths into exposed sediment or deposit material in different places. Wave action works at a new height. The Toba Crater Lake Basin adjusts quietly, redrawing its margins without losing its larger form. You can feel that slow redrawing in the idea of the shore. It is not a fixed border, it is a conversation. Water rises and the lake reaches farther into low ground. Water falls and wet sediment becomes air, then soil, then plant-covered surface. The boundary between land and lake is always becoming itself again. The smell along an exposed margin can be rich, especially where organic sediment has recently dried or plants have taken root. There may be damp mud, mineral grains, young grasses, and the soft scent of decay. Small tracks, fallen leaves and wave-smooth stones add detail. The basin's edge becomes a place where time feels touchable. Terraces or old lake deposits can also show how the resurgent island and caldera floor have moved. If land rises or tilts, old shorelines may no longer sit at the same height everywhere. The geometry of water can reveal the geometry of uplift. Toba's strangeness is written in such relationships: lake level against land movement, water surface against restless crust. We do not need to read those signs with instruments tonight. We only let the idea pass gently. The lake has had more than one level. The island has risen, the slopes have eroded, the basin has kept adjusting. Everything that seems still is part of a longer motion, and that motion is slow enough to cradle the mind. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes a lesson in soft evidence, a line on a slope, a layer in sediment, a warm spring near shore, a deep basin under blue water. None of these signs speaks loudly, yet together they make the place legible. You listen to the land the way you listen to quiet speech, by slowing down enough. The current moment, with morning light on water, is only one expression of the basin. Long before this surface, there were other surfaces. Long after it, there will be others. The lake will continue to answer rain, climate, erosion, and underground movement. It does not need to remain exactly the same to remain itself. And as we leave the old shorelines in softened light, we drift toward the underwater slopes where land continues downward beneath the lake. The underwater slopes of the Toba Crater Lake Basin are hidden continuations of the visible shore. Where the land disappears underwater, it does not end. It descends. The same geological body that carries forest and soil above the surface keeps moving downward into blue shadow, becoming submerged terrain, then deeper wall, then lake floor. You can picture the transition clearly. A beach or rocky edge slips beneath shallow water. Stones remain visible for a while, their colors darkened and softened. Then the bottom drops, plants thin, and the light becomes cooler. The slope continues away from shore, carrying sediment, fallen branches, and fine material toward deeper places. Underwater slopes are important in deep basins because they guide sediment movement. Fine particles may settle gently through open water, but coarser material and denser flows can travel along inclines. After heavy rain, streams may deliver sediment that slides or spreads downward. The basin floor receives what the slopes release, and the lake's hidden geography slowly changes. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange because some of its steepness remains underwater. From the surface, you see a quiet expanse. Beneath that surface, land may fall away more sharply than the eye expects. Depth begins near shore in some areas, giving the lake its inland sea feeling. You float over a submerged landscape, not a simple bowl of water. In the half-light below the surface, the slope would feel muted and calm. Plants may cling where light permits. Beyond that, sediment lies in thin coats over older material. The water grows cooler. Particles drift past. A fish may move along the contour, using the slope as shelter or pathway. Then the shape fades into darker blue. These hidden slopes connect the lively shore to the silent floor. They are corridors for matter and energy. A leaf from the forest may settle in a shallow pocket, break down, and feed organisms. A grain of sand may move a little farther during a storm. A finer particle may continue all the way down. The slope is a slow conveyor made of gravity and water. There is a softness in imagining gravity this way, not as a force that rushes, but as a constant invitation downward. In the Toba Crater Lake Basin, Gravity draws sediment from rim to shore, from shore to slope, from slope to floor. It draws water into low places. It draws your attention into depth. It is the quiet direction of the whole landscape. The submerged slopes also hold clues about the basin's past. Layers exposed or buried along them may show older lake conditions, volcanic deposits, or erosion surfaces. Faults and fractures may shape them. Uplift may tilt them. Sediment may drape them. The lake hides these details, but their hiddenness makes the surface more mysterious and restful. You can let yourself drift parallel to such a slope, neither rising nor sinking quickly. The water is dim green-blue near you. The bottom falls away to one side. Above, the surface trembles like a pale ceiling. Below, the lake deepens beyond sight. The body relaxes into the idea of being held between land and depth. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is full of these in-between places. Shore and water, island and lake, surface and floor, heat and coolness, past and present. The strangeness is not a single feature, but a set of thresholds, each one quiet enough to cross without waking fully. And as the slope falls away beneath us, we enter again the deeper water where the basin's silence becomes more complete. Deep water in the Toba Crater Lake Basin has a way of removing detail. The farther you sink in imagination, the less the eye can hold. Color thins, edges dissolve, the surface becomes remote. What remains is pressure, coolness, and the feeling of a great volume surrounding you. It is not empty, it is simply beyond easy seeing. In fresh water, as in the ocean, depth changes sensation. Light is absorbed and scattered. Temperature often becomes more stable. Sound travels differently. Motion slows, or seems to. You become aware of weight without burden. The water above you is not a ceiling exactly, but a layered presence, each layer adding a little more quiet. The Toba Crater Lake Basin reaches into that kind of hidden depth because the Caldera made room for it. Ordinary valleys can hold lakes, but volcanic collapse can create extraordinary accommodation space. Water fills the lowered area. Sediment begins to accumulate. The basin becomes a deep container where environmental memory can gather for long periods. You can imagine the sediment below as very fine. If touched, it might rise in a pale cloud and settle again only slowly. It holds organic matter, mineral grains, altered ash, and the soft remains of lake life. In places, chemical processes may change its color or texture. In all places, it speaks the language of accumulation. Accumulation is a sleep word, though it may not sound like one at first. It means nothing is forced. It means grain after grain, layer after layer, breath after breath. The Toba Crater Lake Basin has accumulated water, sediment, forest, mist, and meaning. It has become itself by receiving what arrives. Near the deep floor, oxygen and chemistry may vary, depending on how often deep water mixes with upper layers and how much organic matter settles. Such conditions influence what organisms can live there and how sediment changes after burial. The science is intricate, but the feeling is simple. Below the bright water, the lake keeps a slower, more private chemistry. Microbes in sediment are part of that hidden world. They transform organic matter and participate in cycles of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, iron, and other elements. We can let those names pass softly, not as a list to study, but as signs that even darkness is active. The bottom is quiet, but it is not asleep in the way stone is asleep. You are descending through an ecosystem that changes with depth. Near the surface, light feeds photosynthesis. In the middle, drifting life moves through shadow. Near the floor, decomposition and chemical exchange become more important. The Toba Crater Lake Basin holds all these zones within one body of water, stacked gently from sky to sediment. This vertical arrangement makes the lake feel like a slow tower turned upside down. The roof is the shining surface. The rooms below grow darker and cooler. The foundation is soft mud over volcanic structure. You pass through them without opening doors, only sinking from one kind of quiet into another. And as the deepest water surrounds us, we turn our attention to the basin's long volcanic sleep, the warmth beneath the calm that does not disturb the surface. Volcanic systems do not always end cleanly when a major eruption is over. Heat can remain in the crust for a very long time. Fluids can circulate through fractures. Minerals can alter. Small expressions of warmth may reach the surface. In the Toba Crater Lake Basin, this lingering heat is part of the place's hidden character. You can think of it as warmth folded deep under coolness. Above, the lake is fresh and blue, touched by wind and rain. Around it, forest grows in moist highland air. Beneath it, the crust still remembers the conditions that made the caldera. The contrast is gentle now, not a conflict, but a layering of histories. Warm springs around volcanic lake basins arise when water moves downward, heats underground, and returns along paths of weakness. The water may dissolve minerals and carry them upward. Where it emerges, it can create small areas of different temperature, scent, and color. A spring may steam faintly in cool air, while the lake nearby remains smooth and dark. The Toba Crater Lake Basin feels strange because this warmth can be so subtle beside such immense water. The old volcanic system does not need to dominate the scene. It appears in hints: a warmer seep, a mineral stain, a change in smell, a reminder that the calm lake is connected to deep processes below the visible landscape. You may imagine placing your hand near a warm spring at the shore. The surrounding air is cool, but the water slipping over stone carries a gentler heat. It smells faintly of minerals, earth, and perhaps sulfur, softened by rain and open lake air. The sensation is intimate, almost small, yet it comes from a deep geologic source. This smallness makes it restful. A vast volcanic history becomes a warm thread of water. A caldera-scale process becomes a place where steam lifts quietly into mist. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is full of translations like that, where enormous forces become gentle surface details. You can receive the detail without needing to hold the whole force behind it. Geothermal warmth can influence local habitats, though only in limited places. Microbes may live along mineral surfaces. Certain plants may favor damp, warm ground nearby. Chemical gradients may form where spring water mixes with lake water. These are small variations within the broader ecosystem, local notes in the basin's low music. The lake as a whole remains governed by its larger balances of rain, depth, climate, circulation, and geology. The warmth below is not the only story. It is one layer among many. In Toba, everything seems to be one layer among many, and that is why the place keeps unfolding, even when the surface appears still. We drift away from the spring in thought, and the coolness returns fully. The lake air moves softly over your skin. The mineral scent fades back into fresh water and vegetation. The far rim grows pale in the morning haze. The Toba Crater Lake Basin settles again into blue quiet, carrying its hidden warmth below. And as we leave that warmth beneath the water, we follow the basin outward into the surrounding highlands, where the caldera's edge blends into older landscapes. The highlands around the Toba Crater Lake Basin are not separate from the lake. They are the shoulders of the basin, the slopes and ridges that gather weather and send water inward. From the lake, they rise in overlapping green and blue layers. From within them, the lake appears and disappears through openings, always below, always waiting. The air in these highlands can feel cool for a tropical island. Elevation lifts the basin into a different climate from the lower regions. Mist is more common. Nights can feel softer and cooler. Rain may arrive with little warning, not abruptly in feeling, but as a steady dimming of light and a deepening scent of leaves. This climate helps make Toba what it is now. Without abundant moisture, the caldera would not hold the same lush margins. Without cooler highland air, the lake would feel different against the body. Without frequent cloud and rain, the slopes would weather differently. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is a volcanic form clothed by climate. You can walk in imagination along a high ridge above the lake. The ground is damp in shaded places. Ferns and grasses touch your ankles. The lake lies below, broad and bright where sunlight reaches it. Samosir rests in the middle distance. The far rim is hazy, so the whole basin seems larger than certainty. From this height, the strangeness becomes visible again. The lake is too wide to feel like an ordinary mountain lake. The island is too large to feel like an ornament. The enclosing slopes are too broad to feel like a simple crater. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes a whole terrain of collapse, water, uplift, and weather. Yet even from above, the place remains quiet. There is no need to imagine motion quickly. The slopes are still. The lake moves only in small brightness. Clouds cast shadows that glide across water and land. A distant stream may glint where it descends. Your breath slows, because the landscape asks for a wider kind of attention. The highland soils may derive partly from volcanic materials, weathered and mixed with organic matter. Such soils can be fertile, but they are also shaped by slope, rainfall, drainage, and vegetation. In wet places, nutrients move. In stable places, horizons form. Roots explore. Microbes work. The ground beneath the forest is a living extension of volcanic history. The Toba Crater Lake Basin therefore has no clean boundary between geology and ecology. The rock shapes the soil shapes the plants shape the water shapes the lake shapes the air returns as rain. Each part leans into another, making the basin feel enclosed by relationship rather than by walls. You may notice how this kind of connectedness quiets the mind. There is no isolated fact to hold tightly. Each fact leads into a process, and each process leads into another. The basin becomes a slow chain of belonging. Heat belongs to rock, rock to soil, soil to forest, forest to rain, rain to lake, lake to mist. As we stand in thought on the high ridge, the lake below reflects another passing cloud, and we begin to descend again toward the water, following the path of rain through the forested slope. The rain path begins in the canopy. A cloud thickens, and droplets collect on leaves before falling farther down. Some drops strike branches and break apart into finer spray. Some slide along bark. Some reach the ground with a soft tapping sound. The air becomes fragrant with wet green surfaces, and the Toba Crater Lake Basin begins another cycle of inward movement. Water on the forest floor does not all run straight to the lake. Much of it enters soil, where roots, pores, and organic matter slow its passage. It moves around grains, through tiny channels, and along buried surfaces. This hidden flow helps feed springs and streams after rain has stopped. The basin continues receiving water long after the sky clears. You can imagine kneeling near the ground and hearing the muted drip from leaves. The soil is dark, cool, and textured with small roots. The smell is rich but gentle, made of decay and growth together. A trickle appears, joins another, and begins moving downhill. It is a small beginning, but the lake below is made from countless beginnings. The Toba Crater Lake Basin gathers these beginnings across its slopes. Each ravine, fold, and hillside contributes in its own way. Some areas send clear water. Others send more sediment. Some respond quickly to rain. Others release water slowly through seepage. The lake's calm surface is supported by this varied hidden work. As water moves downslope, it carries dissolved minerals and tiny particles from volcanic soils. It may pass through leaf litter rich with organic compounds. It may cool in shade, warm in sunlight, or join a stream that has already traveled far. By the time it reaches the lake, it has become a subtle mixture of the landscape it crossed. This is why water can be thought of as memory. It remembers not by thinking, but by carrying. It carries temperature, chemistry, sediment, and scent. When we stand at the edge of Toba and breathe the damp air, we are near a lake made from many such carried traces. The basin holds what its slopes have given. At the stream mouth, the moving water slows. It spreads into the lake, and its sediment begins to settle according to size and weight. Coarser grains remain closer in. Finer particles drift outward. Some dissolved material stays invisible, joining the lake's chemistry. The Toba Crater Lake Basin receives the stream and changes it into lake. You can watch the meeting place in your mind. The stream is narrow, lively, and slightly cooler. The lake is broad, slow, and deep. Where they meet, ripples cross at different angles. A faint line of cloudier water spreads outward, then thins. Leaves gather briefly in an eddy, then release. The small sound of running water dissolves into the larger hush. This dissolving is one of the basin's repeated gestures. Streams dissolve into lake. Mist dissolves into air. Light dissolves into water. Ash dissolves into soil. The old eruption dissolves into landscape. Nothing disappears completely. It changes form, becoming quieter, more distributed, more woven into the place. And as the stream's voice fades into the lake, we follow its fine sediment outward, into the blue where falling begins again. A fine grain of sediment entering the Toba crater lake basin may travel slowly once it leaves the stream. If it is very small, it can remain suspended for a long time, carried by currents and turbulence. It may drift near the surface, sink through middle water, or be moved sideways before descending. Its journey is not straight, but it is patient. You can imagine it turning in the water, catching a faint piece of light, then losing it. Around it are other grains, fragments of plant matter, microscopic life, and dissolved substances too small to see. The grain is part of a suspended world. It has left the slope, but it has not yet reached the floor. It is between origins. The Toba crater lake basin is full of such between states. Water between cloud and lake, sediment between slope and floor, island between buried caldera and visible land, mist between water and air. The basin's strangeness comes partly from this sense of transition, as though everything is slowly becoming something else while remaining calm. As the grain sinks, light fades around it. Near the surface, it may pass through green water where plankton live. Deeper down, it enters cooler, dimmer layers. Its fall may pause in slow currents or continue through stillness. Eventually, it reaches the bottom or becomes part of a layer forming there. The journey ends by joining other arrivals. Sediment layers can be thin, almost delicate. A season may leave one kind of deposit, a storm another, a quiet year another. Over long spans, these layers build thickness, and their differences become a record of changing conditions. In Toba, such deposits help preserve the lake's environmental history inside the caldera. You can picture the bottom receiving the grain with no visible event. There is no sound you could hear, no light changes. The grain simply comes to rest. Around it, other particles lie from earlier days, earlier rains, earlier blooms, earlier centuries. The deep floor of the Toba crater lake basin is made from arrivals too small to notice alone. This is a deeply calming idea. Much of the world is built by things too small to announce themselves. A shoreline is shaped by waves. A soil is built by decay. A lake floor is made by settling. A sleep comes through breaths, each one ordinary, each one enough. The basin and the body understand gradual change. Beneath the sediment, older deposits hold older stories. Some may relate to the early filling of the basin. Some may reflect shifts in climate or erosion. Some may include material from volcanic sources. Layers accumulate over the old caldera structure, softening it, burying it, and preserving it. The lake floor is both cover and archive. The Toba crater lake basin keeps its archive in darkness, but darkness is a good keeper. Without constant disturbance, fine layers can remain. Without bright life at the surface of the floor, certain details may be preserved. Conditions vary, of course, and the lake is not perfectly still, yet its depth gives memory a place to gather. As the grain settles into its layer, we let our attention settle with it, then rise only enough to feel the enormous water above, still held by the volcanic rim. From near the bottom, the water above the Toba crater lake basin feels almost endless. It is not endless, of course, but the body in imagination knows it as a vast overhead quiet. The surface is far away, a pale idea rather than a visible boundary. The rim, the island, the forest, and the sky are all translated into depth. This translation is what deep water does. It takes the visible world and turns it into pressure, temperature, and darkness. It takes rain and turns it into layers. It takes falling leaves and turns them into sediment. It takes sunlight and turns it into faint blue, then nothing. The lake is an interpreter between surface and floor. You can rest inside that interpretation. There is no need to climb back quickly toward brightness. The deep water is steady. It has no sharp colors. It has no busy edges. It holds the idea of the basin in a quieter form. The Toba Crater Lake Basin becomes less a landscape you look at and more a calm you are inside. At such depth, life is subtler. There may be organisms adapted to dimness, to colder water, to the conditions near sediment. Microbes are especially important here, working invisibly within the cycles of the lake. Small animals may move through deep zones if oxygen and food allow. Every living presence is part of the basin's slow economy. Food in deep water often begins above. Sunlit organisms grow near the surface. Then, some portion of their remains sinks. Material from shore and streams also descends. The deep ecosystem depends on what falls, what is mixed downward, and what chemical energy is available. It is a world of receiving, transforming, and waiting. The Toba Crater Lake Basin makes this downward dependence easy to feel. The floor relies on the surface, and the surface relies on the slopes, and the slopes rely on rain, and rain relies on air moving over the highlands. Everything feeds something else by passing through. The basin is not a still picture, it is a slow exchange. That exchange has been going on for a very long time. The exact conditions have changed again and again, yet the pattern of relationship continues. Water gathers, life responds, material sinks, sediment records, weather returns. You can let that pattern repeat in your mind like waves, broad enough that no single wave startles you. The hidden floor is not lonely in this view. It is connected to every leaf above it. It is connected to every stream. It is connected to each cloud that forms over the lake. Darkness does not mean separation. In Toba, darkness is one of the places where connection becomes most complete, because everything that falls eventually arrives there. And as that connection deepens, we move through another slow cycle, from the bottom's silence back toward the rim's green slopes and the clouds gathering there. Clouds over the Toba Crater Lake Basin often feel as though they belong to the landform. They gather against ridges, trail over the lake, and dissolve in the morning sun. Sometimes they hide the far side entirely, making the basin seem smaller and more intimate. Sometimes they lift high enough to reveal the full sweep of water and rim. Clouds form from moisture, rising air, cooling, and condensation. But within the Caldera setting, the result feels almost personal to the lake. The water supplies vapor. The highlands guide air upward. The cooler elevations help moisture condense. The basin becomes a cloud-making place, not always, but often enough to shape its mood. You can imagine standing at the shore as a low cloud moves across the water. It arrives without a hard edge. First, the far island dims. Then the open lake turns pale. Then droplets touch your face and hair. Sound becomes close. The Toba Crater Lake Basin withdraws from distance and offers only the nearby water, stones, and breath. This shrinking of the visible world is deeply restful. The mind no longer has to cross the whole lake. It only has to be here. A wet stone, a reed bending, a few rings from drops, a soft grey surface fading a short distance away. The basin's vastness remains, but mist covers it kindly, allowing attention to loosen. When cloud lifts, the opposite happens. Space returns gradually. The island reappears. The rim strengthens. A patch of blue sky opens and trembles on the lake. You remember again how large the basin is. The alternation between hidden and revealed becomes part of Toba's rhythm, like breathing in and out through weather. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange, because it is always partly concealed. Water conceals the floor. Forest conceals the volcanic deposits. Mist conceals the rim. Time conceals the first formation. Yet each concealment is soft, not frustrating. It gives the landscape depth. It lets the listener drift rather than stare. Even the island can be concealed in layers. In morning haze, Samosir may appear detached from detail, only a dark form in pale water. Later, its slopes become clear. In rain, it fades again. The resurgent dome is both evidence and mystery. visible enough to anchor the basin's story, hidden enough to remain dreamlike. You can rest with this partial seeing. Sleep does not need total clarity. It often comes when the world becomes less sharp, when edges blur and meanings soften. The Toba Crater Lake Basin offers that blurring naturally. It lets geology remain real while surrounding it with mist, water, and distance. As the cloud moves over us, we drift beneath its shadow across the lake, toward a quieter afternoon when the light lies low and the water grows darker again. Afternoon light in the Toba Crater Lake Basin can have a heavier warmth than morning, even when the air remains cool. The sun has traveled across the sky, and the slopes hold deeper shadows. The lake's surface becomes more reflective in places, more opaque in others. Wind may gather softly, drawing long ripples over the open water. You feel the day stretching, not with urgency, but with fullness. The basin has received morning mist, sunlight, cloud, perhaps rain, and now the slower tone of afternoon. The smell near shore changes slightly as warmed leaves release their scent. Wet soil dries a little on top. Water remains cool underneath. Everything is layered, even the air. The Toba Crater Lake Basin's color may shift through the day because of light angle, cloud cover, wind texture, and suspended particles. Blue can deepen when the sky is clear. Gray can spread under cloud. Green may show near shallows or where life and sediment influence the water. The lake is always the same basin, but never the same surface. You can watch this without needing to name each change. A dark patch forms where wind roughens the water. A bright path opens toward the sun. The island's reflection breaks and reforms. A cloud shadow travels across the lake like a slow hand. The rim holds everything in a wide stillness. This is a good time to feel the basin as a whole again. The Caldera rim surrounds the lake. Sumatra rests inside it. Deep water fills the old hollow. Sediment gathers below. Forest and slopes feed the margins. Warmth lingers underneath. Clouds move above. The Toba Crater Lake Basin is strange, because all of these layers are visible or imaginable at once. Yet the feeling does not become crowded. The lake spreads the information out. It gives each part room. The mind can move from one to another slowly, like a small boat crossing open water. Rim, water, island, depth, forest, cloud. None interrupts the others. They belong to the same quiet field. In the afternoon, thermal differences between land and water may help shape local breezes. Land warms and cools differently from the lake. Air responds, moving gently across slopes and surface. These movements can influence small waves, evaporation, and the feel of the shoreline. The basin makes its own local weather from ordinary contrasts. You can feel such a breeze arrive. It touches the water first, roughening the surface in fine lines. Then it reaches your face, cool with a hint of lake dampness. Leaves shift behind you. The sound is low and continuous. The breeze is not something separate from the basin. It is the basin expressing a difference between land and water. The Toba Crater Lake Basin often feels like a place of expressions rather than events. A breeze expresses temperature contrast. Mist expresses moisture and cooling. A shoreline expresses water level and wave action. Samosea expresses uplift. The lake expresses collapse, filled with rain. Each feature is a sentence spoken slowly by the landscape. As afternoon lowers toward evening, those sentences become softer. The light lengthens. Shadows climb and stretch. The water darkens between bright ripples. The far rim turns blue again. Your attention begins to descend with the day, returning to the same calm direction that has guided us from the beginning. And as evening gathers for another slow descent, we drift toward the lake's middle, where distance removes detail and leaves only shape, depth, and breath. And as evening gathers for another slow descent, we drift toward the lake's middle, where distance removes detail and leaves only shape, depth, and breath. The Toba Crater Lake Basin rests around you in widening shadow, its rim fading into blue darkness, its island becoming a quiet form within the water. The surface holds the last light for a moment, then lets it go. You do not need to understand the whole basin now. The caldera can keep its deep structure. The island can keep its uplifted silence. The sediment can keep settling in the dark, grain by grain, beneath the cool lake. What matters is the feeling of being held inside an old shape, where water has gathered, softened and stilled what the earth once opened. The air grows cooler against your skin. A faint breath of wind crosses the lake and disappears. Somewhere near an unseen shore, small waves touch stone with a patient sound, then withdraw, then return. Above you, the first stars are only beginning to show, and below you, the deep freshwater darkness lies untroubled and complete. The Toba crater lake basin remains strange in the gentlest way, a vast hollow filled with rain, reflection, and time. It asks nothing from you. It does not hurry your thoughts. It only holds the night, the island, the mist, and the long quiet floor beneath the water. Far below the last pale shimmer, fine sediment keeps falling through the dark, and now you can settle with it, softly and slowly, into the deep basin, where the water is still, the old stone is quiet, and nothing needs to rise again.